Oh, here we go. Thank you again for being here tonight. So I added this to the agenda. We meet typically the second Thursday of the month, and I wanted to talk about moving that to the first Thursday of the month, which is today. One of the reasons is that we have a conflict right now scheduling in this particular room with the Parks Board and KKB. And so because we don't meet as often as they do, I wanted to bring that to y'all's attention and see if you guys had any thoughts about that.
I'm fine with it.
I think whatever you want to make it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll work around it.
Okay, and if we can get a motion to change the meeting time so we have that reflected.
I'll make a motion to move it to the first Thursday of the month, correct? First Thursday of the month.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Still at 5:30.
Correct, at 5:30, yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay, tonight we have two cases before us in the public hearing for each. The first one is BOA case number 25-01, and the case reads, to receive comments and consider action on a request for a variance as required by the Unified Development Code, Article 6, Table 6.3, C1, Restricted Commercial District, to allow for a reduction of the side setback that is adjacent to an R3 residential property from 25 foot to 12.5 feet for the property located at 708 Corey A. Edwards Drive, City of Kennedale, Tarrant County, Texas 76060. At this time, we will open the public hearing at 5:40.
Anybody's scheduled at the top?
No speakers
No
tonight?
speakers, ma'am.
Okay, we will close the public hearing then at 5:41. Do you have staff report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this case is, and Tina, I'm going to go ahead and pull up, if you could put it on the podium. I want to show them something on the map. So this case is again, just asking for a variance. The applicant's asking for a variance to reduce the side yard setback for a commercial property. This is C1 that is adjacent to an R3 residential property. And so this is an older snapshot of that part of town, and I'll take away some of the layers. This house, this was a rental home, been there for some time. It's since been demolished. And if you notice, it's long been zoned C1 commercial, as far back as I can find on maps. It just hasn't been actually developed as commercial. So now we have that in town. And we have approved a building permit November, December. But I know we've had some challenges trying to schedule a variance request. So we would like to issue that building permit. But before we can, the UDC says that when you have a commercial building that's adjacent to residential, the request tonight is to allow for a variance of 12.5. Depending on the zoning district, that could be a setback of 25 or sometimes it's 50. I believe in this one, it may in fact be 50, but the request is to allow for the side yard setback to be reduced to 12.5. And this is unique. Most of the times when we have commercial property, we want them to maintain that 50 that side yard setback. However, the applicant is also the owner of the house next door, which is the R3 property. And so this is a different situation than typically before. And so the owner himself does not have any issues with reducing that side yard setback because he actually owns both properties, the commercial and then the residential next door, which were both rentals at one point. So if you have any questions specific to the development itself, we do have the applicant here, but essentially this is I want to say it's 2,000, just under 3,000 square feet commercial structure. Parking would be at the rear. The building itself meets the 50-foot side yard or rear yard setback from the adjacent R3 behind it. So we've met that. There's a landscape buffer as well, so there's no need to request a variance for this side. And of course, that doesn't apply here. We do have a residential structure, but again, it's a C1 property, so that side yard setback is fine. The drive itself into the small parking in the area, in the rear, has sufficient width to get a vehicle back there. And the structure itself has like a storefront up front, a small office, restroom, and then the rest of the back is storage. There's a bay door on it. And so they're hoping to get a tenant to move into that structure once it's constructed. So again, and staff, we reviewed our codes. We are in support of it because it's consistent with the future land use plan and it's consistent with the existing zoning being commercial itself. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Nathan, would you speak to the width of that property in total? Isn't it something like 75 feet or
Yeah,
75? So a 50-foot setback would make it absolutely impossible to build anything.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
25 would make it pretty much impossible.
Yeah,
Long, narrow building.
So to fit into the zoning there, you really need to do something about the setbacks on that to be usable. And it fits within the city's future plans of that property.
that's correct. You are correct that the irregularity of the lot, when you look at, is it was a residential lot at one point, so those are smaller lots. And so the irregularity of the lot would make it not feasible to even construct it to meet our current zoning, creating a hardship. And so that's the reason for the request for variance, and we're in support of that.
And so, quick question to you, Nathan. You've gone through the 4 areas and identified it is a hardship. It's no problem to the neighbors close by, and the city is supporting the request.
Correct. And one of those is it a hardship that they've created? You know, is it just more expensive to not meet the zoning? That's not the case here. So here we have a true need for a variance, in my opinion, and we do have a hardship here. Because of the zoning, it would not allow a commercial building to really be constructed on that particular lot. And it's unlike, there isn't anything else in town that has a similar situation. Well, there may be, I assume, it just hadn't been built yet, but.
Patrick?
Does the owner of the property and the owner of the property just, that we're discussing, does the owner live in that piece of property or does he just own it?
The owner, he owns it. It is a rental to the north, but he owns the rental home and the lot where the C1 property. Correct, correct.
Okay. Do I have a motion before we go into discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve case 25-01.
I second it.
There any comments, concerns, or questions from the board? All right, now that we have a motion and a second, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Is anyone opposed? Okay, that passes, and we'll move forward.
All right. Thank you.
Now we will move forward to the next case for consideration tonight, BOA Case 2502, to receive comments and consider action on a request for a special exception to allow for an impound storage facility as required by Table 6.2 of the Unified Development Code for the property located at 1208 East Kennedale Parkway, the Greenleaf Edition, Block 1, Lot 1, City of Kennedale in Tarrant County, Texas. We'll open the public hearing at 5:48.
Madam Chair, there is no speakers.
There's no speakers this evening, so we'll go ahead and close that public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Okay, that sounds great. Have you been sworn in? Okay. If we can take care of that as a
I
speaker.
apologize, ma'am.
No, it's all right.
For the public hearing, we don't need to swear in.
Oh,
for them.
okay.
It would just be the applicants if we needed to.
And for everyone here, we appreciate the correction. Thanks, Nate. All right. So do you want to go staff first, or could we ask you to come up and state your name, address for us all, and let us know what you'd like for us to hear about your case this evening?
Thank you. Well, considering the political climate lately, I'm glad I don't have to swear in. So. My name is Joe Palmer. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Represent the group Kennedale Alliance of Business Owners. Is that too loud? Is that a little bit? All right, thank you. We're in favor of this proposal. This would be a great step to demonstrate Kennedale's intent to welcome businesses to the city. This type of business is very much needed and provides a service and mechanism for removing unwanted cars throughout the city. It is evident that the owner has demonstrated an enthusiasm for the community and the economy of Kennedale. It's in the correct part of town where the city should be welcoming commercial and industrial businesses in the Bloxham's area. And it is supportive of our common goal with city administration to shift more of the tax burden away from residents. We ask for the board's favorable consideration, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Would you mind not staying there, as so if Nathan speaks and we have questions, we may address those to you?
Be happy to answer any questions.
Sounds
You
great.
want me to stay near the
No,
proximity
just
of the microphone?
close by in case you have to come back up.
Sure.
Thank you. Staff's recommendation?
Evening. So just for clarification, Mr. Palmer is speaking on behalf and support of the applicant. We do have, he's not the applicant himself, so if you have any questions,
That
we'll
sounds
direct
great.
that to the applicant.
Okay.
But we do have them here as well. So I'll just kind of show you on our map here what we're talking about. And I got that right? Mr. Bennett? 12. Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, this was the former location of LKQ, which was a auto salvage operation. Obviously, this is an older photo. The site has since been cleared out, and it's been sold, to Beard's Towing. If that name rings a bell, it's because the city of Kennedale was successful in attracting that business to come to town. Economic development's been instrumental. City manager's been instrumental in doing that as well. So we got a new employer coming into town, a new business coming into town, and this site is a great location for it. It's zoned appropriately for the use. It's consistent with our future land use plan. An impound facility isn't permitted by right, so it requires a special exception from this board, and that's to give you and the city the ability to review each case on its merits. They run a good operation. I believe our police department, fire department, anytime they need to call, they are the ones to call to have those vehicles removed from a public roadway. And I've even prior to coming to Kennedale, I've heard of Beard's Towing and their reputation. So we're happy to have them. Again, it's consistent with all our plans, and we do recommend approval.
Thank you.
This is just a typical impound yard where people can come up, pay their fines, and get their car back.
Sure, I'll invite the applicant to come speak more about that. I've had a vehicle towed, but never had an impounded, so can't really speak to that too much.
Knock wood.
Yeah.
I've seen it on television, so I just want to put me in what happens when they come up there other than angry customers coming up to your front door.
Yeah.
Well, my name's James Bennett. I'm the owner of Beard's Towing. To answer that question on the short version, no, we're not a typical impound facility. We are not a typical impound facility. So we house the vehicles that are involved with anything to do with the Tarrant County Auto Theft Task Force, the Tri-County Auto Theft Task Force. We hold both of those contracts. Any vehicle that is involved in a theft, murder, homicide, any range to do with the motor vehicle in an investigation purposes. We have investigation bays that hold up in the Supreme Courts. They are completely unmanned, but they have cameras that are in them. They have blue lights for forensic in them, fluorescent lights for investigations in them. We offer this service to the city of Kennedale at no charge, as well as the Tarrant County. So when the city has an investigation of a theft or a murder or anything like that, the vehicle is completely custody, the chain of custody is not broken. The city is able to have a login to watch the bay that the vehicle's in, live stream. They can download a USB drive and they can record it from their own console. Our facility also houses vehicles that are on federal cases as well. Whenever it comes to that investigations, we work well with the Texas Rangers. We've done everything from Ethan Couch's vehicle, the one that just happened here in Forest Hill. We currently have that vehicle. The two major murders that were taking place in North Tarrant County, we currently house those vehicles. Our facility is geared towards PD and FD. We are more of emergency response towing service and impound. We're not more of a yellow page towing company, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm dating myself a little bit. We're not more of a Google towing company. But also, just with that, we have the latest equipment. We are the largest wrecker service in Dallas-Fort Worth, and that's because we service so many cities that, in Johnson County as well. We have a third location in Johnson County. We currently have a location in Fort Worth. Our Tri-County investigations have gotten really big, so we shopped and we looked. We talked with the city, talked to city manager, obviously city staff, and then came across this piece of property by chance looking at another piece of property, and this really fit our needs. We've remodeled a lot of the inside to bring it up to code. Right now, we've spent just under $1 million on the remodel, and that's not including where we're about to go forward with it. We teach fire department extrication training there at no charge. To date, we are just under $700,000 in volunteer, where we've trained fire departments on how to extricate victims out of vehicles. We were the company that did the Stormageddon in Fort Worth with the 133-car pileup. So, but with that said, right now we have 57 employees, and it's just to come to Kennedale. I've been around Kennedale for a long time, the majority of my life, since I was about 12 years old. Our staffing and our tax benefit to the city would be great, because there's a tax on every vehicle that's impounded and released, and that comes back obviously in the city's favor.
Thank you very much. And a quick question, could you repeat your last name again?
James Bennett.
Bennett.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Mr. Bennett, you said you had 57 employees. How many bays, and if I was going to drive up to your property, what would I see from the road?
As a matter of fact, if you go now and you look at it, we've completely resurfaced the whole entire building, and updated that. We put new windows, all new emergency exits. The inside's been completely gutted and remodeled on the inside. You would see a very clean building. We're $127,000 just in fencing. $127,000 just in a brand new fence that's all the way around the building. And we're actually double fenced, by the way. The Texas Department of License and Regulations requires a 10-foot fence with 3 strands of barbed wire, as well as the local police department for impound purposes, so it would deter theft. We also have, this property will be surveyed with 163 camera system that also the city would have a login to. There's currently almost 2 million luminance, however worth of lighting that's been put on this property, and we haven't even touched the building yet. So it's completely lit up. It's a 24/7 operation. It's manned 24/7. And then with that said, as we spoke about before, the law enforcement present. You'll see a lot of Tarrant County, Arlington, Mansfield, Kennedale, Forest Hill, Everman, Crowley. All of those cities will eventually have something interchanging and law enforcement coming back and forth at any given time. Law enforcement's to the city in which the vehicle was originated in will have it's paperless, so everything's done through a drive. So when the vehicle's impounded, if the city would like an inquiry on the vehicle, it comes with 10 pictures of the vehicle all the way around when the vehicle's picked up, when the vehicle's stored, a driver's license or a proof of insurance when the vehicle's picked up. All those are copied and loaded inside the system. So if an officer or the chief wanted a record of it, it's a 10-minute process. He could just tell us this vehicle was towed at this 100 block at this time. We can load that whole jacket as if the same thing that the PD does, and we can have that back to them within 10 minutes. Any vehicle on the lot.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant?
So it'll be a mixture of vehicles that have been in accidents and damaged, and some that have just been impounded by the police and various
Correct.
legal operations.
Correct.
Will it be shielded from the street? But I mean, I haven't been by there. In fact, we're not supposed to go by there. When I leave, I'll go by it. But
Absolutely. It's 100% shielded from the street. I welcome you to come, and obviously when we do the opening, I'd love to have everyone here present. If it's our computer system that we operate right now, I purchased the software development on it in 2015. I purchased it for $60,000. We're about 1.1 million into it right now. The software system tells us everything about the company, tells us how much money we made out of a tire, how much money we're, brakes, et cetera, for our personal vehicles. And then it gives me an average of each mileage for each vehicle that is towed within a month, a year. But it'll also tell me the hot spots that are called in. For instance, we did our pilot program with the city of Arlington, and we stage wreckers. We formed an agreement with QT, and our wreckers are able to park at QT, and that way they have restrooms, they have food and water and everything. And in return, if our wrecker is there, somebody locks their key out or somebody needs a tire change, we'll change it at no charge, and we'll unlock their vehicle at no charge.
Thank you. One last clarification. You mentioned your other line of business was towing, but this facility has no towing, pickup, and drop-off. Like at the apartment complex, if someone's
Correct.
parked
That's
in the wrong
private.
spot.
Absolutely. So that's private property. The state of Texas defines towing into 3 different sections. There's private property, which would be an apartment complex or city-owned real estate or et cetera. Then there's consent towing, which is your typical AAA. You sign up for AAA. AAA is not allowed to remove a vehicle from an accident scene on a public roadway. They can only pick it up, if you're broke down in CVS or something like that. If you're involved in an accident, by law, they're not supposed to. Yes, they do it. However, and then there's incident management towing. Incident management towing is the highest level of the towing organization that we have, and the license that you can carry through the state of Texas, and that's what all of our operators are.
Thank you.
So one point of clarification. If my wife has a flat tire, go to QT.
Correct.
Got it.
And make sure one of the trucks are there.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Any other
any more
questions?
questions for the applicant? Okay, could I look for a motion for consideration before we go into discussion on case 25-2?
I'll make a motion to approve
As written?
as written. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Second? Okay. All those in favor, please indicate with an eye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed this evening? Okay, the case,
Time.
BOA case 25-02 passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, if there's no other business tonight before the Board of Adjustment, I will look for a motion to close. All those in favor of close?
Aye.
Okay, we will close the meeting at 6:03. Thanks, everyone, for coming, and thanks the applicant for being so thorough.
I'll get that to you, hopefully. I don't know if it'll be tomorrow, but. You need some comment? Thank you.
Oh, hey, there, when you, oh, what's the wrong one? Open up the public hearing, you just put the case number, BBA 25. That was BOA, this is BBA. And, yeah. No, she'll be the, during her presentation? Okay, then disregard, they'll just, whenever they call you to swear in, and then raise your hand and she'll swear us in.
Am I going, so she's got hers, she printed it out, we're gonna hand out a copy to everybody. And
So when they open this up, so you'll just swear when it gets to that, so ask for you to swear in this. You'll just swear that the person is then they'll open the public hearing, close the public hearing, and anybody else that speak on it. And what we'll do is we'll read that, I'll have a staff presentation, proper agenda presentation. I'll response to summary, and then you guys get last word. Then they'll discuss it. That's not my intent. I'll give you a stat report, I'll tell you exactly what I'm saying. What's your comment? I'll tell you that. So that's my intent. Well, I'll let the options, but we'll talk about it, so. I don't have anything that we already. Again, you get last word.
right. But they're holding on. I wouldn't be surprised to have 10 steps, you know what's coming.
Well, they'll make a decision. So, and because he feels, he'll get a deal with this report. We can do something on that. So you guys ready to go? No. Does Amber have any speak?
She's gonna try. It's a very sensitive subject.
Good evening. I will now call to order the Building Board of Appeals. It is 6:12. 6:07, I've been corrected. All right, as we call to order, can we get the roll call of attendance?
Ms. McGough.
I'm sorry, Tiffany Mercosi, present.
Amanda Hollins, present.
Pat Nader, present.
Kelly Rod, present.
Ted Crown, present.
Everyone is present, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move into the regular session. We need to swear in speakers this evening.
For everyone who is wishing to speak, could you please come forward and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you shall give to the Board of Appeals in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Very good. You have been sworn in. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move forward with the public hearing for case 2501 of the Building Board of Appeals to conduct a public hearing and consider a city-initiated request for demolition or repair of a single-family dwelling located at 6713 Lindale Road in the Oakcrest Addition, Block 9, Lot 24, City of Kennedale, in Tarrant County, Texas. We'll start with the staff presentation.
Good evening. So this is a request, city-initiated request for a repair, order of repair or demolition at 6713 Lindale Drive. I've got a staff report that I'd like to read, so bear with me. I'll try to keep it not so monotonous or boring, but I do want to read what we've got at this particular address. I understand the applicant will then have an opportunity to come speak. I'll return, summarize, and then we'll give the applicant the last word before the board has any discussion or questions for either of us. The way the Board of Appeals typically works is that anything that I say during the discussion that you all have, you can ask them for a response and in a rebuttal. I do want to give them the last word tonight as well before any action is taken. So I'll begin. So the subject property, the occupant is James Hardy, and the property owner, Amber Hardy. They have extensive history with the City of Kennedale's Code Compliance Division, Police Department as well. The records on file, they note previous attempts by the city to bring the property into compliance. I'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. I'll provide you a timeline that I could find. A lot of it dates as far back as July of 2007. A lot of that were notices of violation having to do with the condition of the property, rubbish, which is trash, debris, discarded materials, scrap, refuse, and the accumulation of that, both visible from the street and on the premises themselves. And so citations have been issued with corresponding dates. Similarly, both the police and fire departments, they've had, over the years, had multiple calls for service at this address. The police department has also advised us that they've issued citations themselves in attempts to have the property cleaned up. And your police department doesn't just do penal code, traffic citations, or anything. They do address quality of life issues, and this is certainly one that we want to bring before you. When the city did not have code compliance, they took the lead, and they've written several citations in the interim. They themselves have they've advised us that they've even mailed letters themselves. But my history with this particular property goes back to the March of 2023. And so the tenant and the property owner were mailed notices of violation by the current staff of community development. So that's myself. We do have a new code enforcement officer, and Todd Ellerbrook. I don't know if some of you have met before. He does building and code compliance. We've made several attempts to ask that the nuisance violations be abated. We performed a follow-up inspection in June 26th of 2023. And we were actually able to obtain consent from the occupant, James Hardy, meaning he allowed us, he met with us, we talked on the phone, he allowed us to come behind the fence that you typically don't see from the street. So he gave us his effective consent in order to conduct our inspection and to just see what the status was. Again, I'll show you the timeline. We've had ample time to work with them to bring the property into compliance. And so on that first initial inspection, we had enormous amounts of trash, rubbish, discarded equipment, home furnishings, unused building materials, tires, bicycles, a lot of bicycles, discarded appliances, and you could see this both in front of the property and behind the dilapidated fence that kind of shields it from view. Meaning that, not that we're peeking over a fence, but it was just stacked, and you can see some of that. The sheer volume and accumulation of these items made it difficult. This is, again, we're talking about June of '23. It made it difficult for us to walk around the property. If it's difficult for us to walk on just normal day, I can imagine the difficulty it'd be for emergency personnel to have to go and try to help somebody back there and how to navigate a lot of the items that were there. So, along the available walking path, there was animal feces scattered throughout the property. The smell itself was foul, offensive, and extremely prevalent. Given that this was the first time that we were able to walk the premises, we were able to observe the poor and dangerous condition of the single-family structure. It's dilapidated. I'll talk a little bit more about what that means and the specifics of that. It's just in poor repair, and so it's been like that for some time. So there's a large accessory structure in the northeast corner. That too is dilapidated. That structure, again, with the consent of the occupant, we were able to enter it and had a real strong rodent and urine smell coming out of that. There's a gas generator that has been running, and its wires have been appears to be spliced in with the building's electric service panel. The property doesn't have electric service from Encore, TXU, or anything like that. They're running a generator, and there's a cord that kind of goes up in there, and that's how they have power at that location. That was evident. The exterior of the home siding, again, was damaged, and sometimes just missing entirely. So siding isn't just cosmetic or anything. It serves a purpose to prevent water, moisture, damage, things of that nature. The roof assembly, and you can see this from the street, but certainly when we were able to perform our inspection or walk the premises with them, I was able to observe that the roof structure itself was buckled. It was in disrepair, missing shingles. You can tell that it's had some foundation issues over time. So that roof assembly gave me reason for concern. We had, their windows were missing, broken. I'll speak a little bit more about that later, that the entire one side of the building is just completely open to the elements. And not in the sense of a patio situation. It was an actual room, and it's open. There's no door or window there. Also, in speaking with them, James advised he did not have running water. From what I understand, I believe they've set up a water account, but to this date, I don't know if there's any active running water to any fixtures within the structure itself. But there is a septic system out there that, according to him, it works, but if you never had water, probably hasn't been maintained over some time. There's large amounts of debris that were sitting on top of the septic tanks themselves, so I don't know what the condition those are of. And the term that he used is, well, we have private water, we have private well, the term he used was iron water. Certainly not something that I'd recommend or consider potable water or water that you can actually drink that's safe. But I understand now, I think he's established water service, which means he's opened up a water account. I just don't know if he's got, you turn a spigot on or a faucet, if he's going to get any water coming out of that. Well, we don't have any active water service there or sewer service. The condition, again, of the septic system is unknown. And so due to the nuisances, condition of the structure and premises, the lack of utilities, at that time I deemed the home unfit for human habitation and advised James that he and the owner, Amber Hardy, a relative of his, would need to bring the home into compliance. And we worked with them, gave them ample time to do that before we've gotten to this point. Again, I'll speak more to that. Furthermore, I advised both James and Amber that the property and the home violated the city's substandard building ordinances. I also serve as your building official, so that's, I'm tasked with ensuring that we have substandard structures in town that need to be brought into compliance. And that's, again, our ask tonight. If they can't be brought into compliance, well, then it's not safe. And then before, we come before you to ask for an order for demolition if it gets to that point. So at the time, I issued a citation to both James and Amber for trash, junk vehicles, and maintaining a substandard structure. And so that was back in June of '23. We've had subsequent court hearings. We have multiple extensions given to James and Hardy to get the property cleaned up. During their court hearings, Amber and James agreed to first remove all the trash and rubbish so that you can access the home in order to provide the necessary repairs, and they agreed to obtain the necessary permits to do so. And so what we did is we continued to reset the court case. And what we did is we worked with them, meaning we gave them time before we cited them. We didn't write any more additional citations. We didn't ask for any additional fines or anything like that, but they were to work in phases to get the property cleaned up because it was quite a bit. And I'll agree with one thing that Amber said at the time. It didn't get like that overnight. It's not going to get cleaned up overnight, right? So I completely agree with that. And so we afforded them ample time to do that. And each month that the court date was reset, they had to appear before court and they had to provide an update. We were also allowed to return multiple times to do those inspections to show that the property was cleared up. And I'll show you some photos of that later tonight to where there was some progress. Okay, we were getting some things removed. They even had the assistance of a neighbor provide them best I could describe as like a military surplus trailer. I mean, it's not one that you find at Trader's Village or anything. It's if you want a trailer, that's the trailer to get. I'll tell you that. And it can contain quite a bit. So I know again, it's expensive. You got to load the stuff up. You got to take it down to the dump. There's costs involved with that. So that occurred. They hired a contractor once they could get access to the actual building to first repair the home's foundation, and in doing that, hoping to correct some of the roof assembly at the process. Unfortunately, that contractor failed to obtain a permit, so we had to issue a stop work order. They went, obtained their permit, provided us an engineer, foundation letter, and method of repair, and then they went to work. That jobs never had any inspections called in. Never called the city, never scheduled any inspections. We continued to drive by the site. They ran, and they'll probably speak to that tonight, is after that building permit was issued, it was in December of 2023. And that was to repair the foundation, but the following month, we just had a monsoon of rain, and they had excavated under the pier and beam structure, and those trenches were just flooded with water, and they couldn't get the water out. The contractor didn't dig any trenches, to try to alleviate some of that. As far as I know, it seemed like they had walked off. I recall a conversation with, I believe it was Amber, it may have been the contractor as well, about, hey, where are you at with this? And it was either Amber or the contractor said, I didn't know we need to call inspection. And I'm like, how does that, you do foundation work and that's part of the process, and that's what they do. So that part was a little concerning to me. And so again, we did follow up multiple times, but again, that building permit for the foundation repair, not everything else that needed to be done. That was the first step. That building permit expired. And our building permits, when we issue a building permit, they're good for 6 months before they expire. In fact, they automatically renew, the building code actually states, they automatically renew 6 more months from the last past inspection. So let's say you were building a home, do the foundation. We're not going to give you 6 months to build a home. It would be nice, but I don't know anybody who can do that, right? So you get your building permit automatically renews every 6 months to give you time to get those completed. So it's ample time. The building permit expired. They have not called in or sent in any request to have the building permit renewed. And all that really is a request. Can you have it renewed? Well, can you show that you've made any progress? And that's usually how that typically works. And so that was again back December 22 of 23. At the last court hearing, I informed the city prosecutor that, again, the violations had yet to be resolved. At that point, I believe as their right, I think they maybe pled no contest, agreed to pay some citations, and they were, I think, put on a payment plan. They'll probably be able to speak more to that than I would. That's more of court proceedings, and it's outside our purview per se. But again, the permit holder and the contractor, they've yet to call in any inspections. We haven't gotten any requests. Perhaps they can speak to more of that, but the last time we actually were able to walk the premises was November 1st of 2024, so this past fall. I remember that day pretty well, and so we returned for a follow-up inspection. We also had the police department with us and the fire department. We had a discussion at the door, at the front gate, and then after some time, James Hardy, he again allowed us, provided his effective consent to come back in there. It did take some talking, because at first he was just adamant, I don't want you here, I don't, and it really wasn't anything to do with, I think, our development staff. It had to do with probably some members of the police department that I think he had perhaps some history. One, I just recall him saying, okay, you can come in, but I don't want you in, right? He was talking to the PD, and of course, they can't do that because of officer safety reasons, but thankfully, he actually allowed us to come back to their credit. They allowed us to walk the premises, and he said, James, we need an update. Where are we? We're a year later, and it's starting to look like it was before. And sure enough, on that day, November 1st, which was the day after Halloween, we confirmed that actually the property did revert back to its previous condition with some improvement. But at that point, I was actually able to, with their consent, look at the foundation work that was done. I could see they had jacked up the floor joists. I didn't see anything anchored. They were sitting on piers. One pier, I'll have a photo of it later. It's one pier with basically like a paver sitting on the bare dirt. Sometimes when you install piers, you need multiple, and they have to be interlocking. I did see fasteners in the floor joists themselves. There's no subfloor in the room that we could see from the outside because it's open. He didn't allow us to walk through the structure. But that part of the job, which was, I want to say it's a good sized room. It's probably about 12 by 12, so you can see quite a bit. You can see underneath, but there's no rim joist around the exterior. We're looking at how it's anchored, and I'm like, this definitely didn't look like the plans that they submitted. So sometimes what happens is if they run into some issues, whether it's funding, payment, or not knowing how, they just walk off the job. Now, I'm not saying they did that, but they just haven't had any communication with our staff, so that's my assumption, right? During that inspection, again, this was November 1st of last year, we did have a gentleman, I don't know who it was, I think it was a colleague of theirs, was sleeping in the car out in front. There's quite a bit of folks that come in and out of that property. We observed rubbish, junk materials, again, animal feces throughout. The areas that were previously cleared had now been reoccupied with the accumulation of that rubbish. The two rooms on the east side of the home, like I said, where their floor joists were visible, but I think I've just spoken to some of those concerns I had. Had an inspection been called in for that job, it would have failed. That just never happened. The roof assembly in the northeast corner at that time appeared like it was collapsing. Now, they can probably speak to more of the reasons as to why. There used to be a tree that was right up against the home, pushing up on that thing, and I want to say they may have had that removed. But they can probably speak to that better than I can. But that roof assembly was a cause for concern. Again, I referenced the accessory structure, that northeast corner. A lot of that stuff was pulled out and then yeah, I don't know if anything was pulled back in, but again, that too is in disrepair, and it looks like it's in near collapse. It does have a truss system inside. It looks like maybe cedar. Just from what I can see on the inside, the exterior is in disrepair, dilapidated, but there may be some good joists. It's an old accessory structure, which is like an old detached garage. It's got metal paneling around the outside. Looks like an old barn or some sort. Can it be repaired? Anything can be repaired, right? It's just whether you're willing to do that. And that's again the question. We've notified again the property owner. She lives down the street. We've sent her certified copies of all the notices. Not only that, but we'll stop by and we'll put one on her front door. Again, we published what we needed to publish in the Star Telegram. So our recommendation is that as we've noticed, is the property has got numerous code violations, and they've been unresolved for some time. Staff, we recommend that that you issue an order to vacate the property, abate all nuisances and substandard building violations, that you issue an order to obtain all necessary permits and repair or demolish the structure within 30 days. If more than 30 days are needed, staff, we recommend that the board require the property owner to provide a detailed construction schedule outlining when the repairs will be made and not to exceed 90 days. And those aren't just arbitrary numbers. Those numbers, 30 days and the 90 days, come directly from your code of ordinances. And that language comes directly from your code of ordinances. Lastly, we recommend that the board issue an order of demolition should the property not be brought into compliance within the required time frame. So I want to be clear tonight that our request isn't to just ask to have this structure torn down like perhaps has occurred in the past in a lot of cities, including Kennedale. Our request is that you issue an order to have it vacated because it's not safe. In my staff report, I detail what I observed on November 1st, and what that was is he wasn't alone in that home. And so there was a young lady that had a baby, a toddler, in her arms that come out. And he said that, hey, I said, is anybody else with you? Right? That's one of the things that code and police officers often ask, hey, are you alone? It's just so we know who's there. We don't want somebody kind of coming out and not aware of. He said, yeah, my wife and my daughter are here. I didn't even know he had a wife and daughter, but that's irrelevant at this point. Can you bring them out? Because it's just not a safe structure. And the young lady, she appeared to be in her 20s. She was carrying that toddler, and that toddler still had the makeup from Halloween the night before. And it was early in the morning, so that tells me they stayed, and she admitted it, they stayed the night there in that structure. I can understand an adult doing what they got to do, putting up with what they got to put up with, but now we've got kids staying in the structure, and as your building official, it is a major concern that I have. It's certainly no place for a child, and I actually said that to them, to Mr. Hardy, that day, and that in that mother, we referred that incident to the proper authorities to follow up with that family to make sure they get support that they need, or at least the police department did, I believe. And so again, our request isn't to just ask you to issue an order to demo. We need this done, and we continue to write. Well, if we continue to write citations, they continue to just get reset, and they're just it's gone on for too long. So again, at this point, I'll yield to the applicant, and they can speak to what they need to. Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Could you state your name for us, please, in full?
My name is Amber Hardy.
Thank you.
So I am the homeowner. I'm going to attempt to do this. There's a very good possibility that you have to step in and finish this for me, right?
That'd be fine. Thank you.
I'm sure. So the property tonight is a little bit different than probably most of them that you guys see. Yes, I am the property owner. I do not live there. My uncle lives there. This is not a rental situation. It's not a rental home. I inherited this house from my grandparents, and along with it, I inherited my uncle, right? He came along with it. That was back in like 2005, so he's been there since I've had the place back then. But really, he's been there since the 70s whenever our family moved here from Florida. So really and truly, this is the only home that James has ever known, right? I'm sure that you'll see the pictures from Nathan tonight, and as you can tell and from his testimony, what he told you, James is a hoarder. There is piles of stuff all around this property. We've worked for the last year and a half or so trying to get some of this stuff out of there. We took approximately 16 tons to the dump, and that was mostly from the front and side of the yard. There was a lot of stuff on this property. Being a hoarder is not necessarily a decision that somebody makes. It is a medical condition, and it's really hard to get mental health help for anybody, but especially one that doesn't understand that there's a problem, right? So that makes it so much more difficult. I've been working with Nathan for, like I said, a year and a half, maybe 2 years, something like that. And we have made attempts to try and remedy the situation. We've been taking all the stuff off the property. As he mentioned, we did hire a contractor to come in and do the foundation work. Late last year is whenever I found out that the process of the permit wasn't closed out, I guess. It wasn't the final inspection. I got a hold of the contractor. He said he did not know that that was a process. In other cities, the engineer that writes the report is the one that comes out and does the final inspection, not code enforcement. So he said that was a different process. He doesn't normally work in Kennedale. He said he would get a hold of Nathan or his office and try and figure that out. Whenever I didn't hear back from him, I contacted him again, and it was kind of like running around in circles, right? He's like, oh, well, I haven't gotten a hold of him yet. And then all of a sudden, this guy stopped responding to me. And so I did call him about 2-3 weeks ago, something like that. I had to leave him a message. He didn't answer. I'm pretty sure he has my number blocked at this point, but I have threatened a civil suit against him because I did pay $13,000 to get the foundation work done, which, as you heard from Nathan, had they have called in the inspection, it wouldn't have passed anyways. I'm not an engineer. I don't know what I'm looking at. There's boards and it's standing up. That's all I know, right? So we have tried to get the structure of the house remedied. You can't do anything further until the foundation is done, and I can't move on structurally, right, from that. As Nathan mentioned, we did get the water to the property turned on. The house is not on city sewer. It's never had city sewer. It's got septic tanks like everybody in the neighborhood did up until a few years back. He mentioned that the septic tanks haven't been used, but they have been. James didn't have running water from the city, but he did have water, whether it be jugs or the water off the personal well that was there. There was running water, so he was flushing a toilet and things of that nature. So the septic has been used. I know that the property does not meet code. He has been trying, like I said, to bring it up. Is he working as fast as I would like? Is he working as fast as you would like? Absolutely not. I understand that there are rules and regulations in place for a reason. These things need to be done. He's not a rich man, he doesn't make a lot of money. I'm supporting myself, right? I'm doing what I can, but I can't necessarily shell out everything that I've got, for somebody else's house. I'm just trying to keep a roof over his head. And while I know that this house is not somewhere that you or most likely, anybody here would want to live in, it is where he does live. And the house is not going to blow over with the wind. Otherwise, it would have the other day, right? Whenever we had those 70-mile-an-hour gust winds. And so that being said, that I know that it isn't necessarily what on paper is deemed safe, but it's much safer than him living on a street or under a bridge somewhere. And honestly, if the house is gone, that's going to be where he ends up, because I don't know of anywhere else that he can go. He is the type of person that would do anything for anybody. He mentioned that there's a lot of people that come and go. He mentioned that there was someone sleeping in their car. He tries to help whoever he can, regardless of who they are or what their social status is or whatever that may be. So the guy that was living in his car is someone that was working with James and helping him on job sites doing random things. And he found out that he didn't have a place to stay. So he told him he could stay in his car in the driveway for a little while, just trying to find a safe place for him to park. I know that if you were to drive by this house, it is an eyesore. Nobody would want to look at it, right? But to my knowledge, none of the actual neighbors in the neighborhood have complained about James or his property. You could probably ask any of them, especially the ones very close to him, that have to look at his house every day, whether or not they want him gone, and they would most likely say no. They can call on him for anything, whether it be yard work or running them down, into town or whatever that may be. He's the type of person you can count on. And I am trying to help him the best that I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber.
We're not
Ms.
done
Hardy?
yet.
Would you like to speak too, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Please, would you give us your name, please?
Yes, ma'am. I'm Derek Hall. Derek Hall. Yes, ma'am. So I've been in the neighborhood a long time. James is like an uncle. Like she says, he helps everybody. If whatever you need, it doesn't matter. He just shows up and helps you. He's a rough guy. He's not that easy to get along with, but he's that guy that you can call for anything, anytime, and he's there to help you, right? And I trust him. He comes into my house and takes care of my dogs. He comes into my house for whatever he needs, just in and out of my house. My house ain't fancy, but he's not a thief. He's not out living out on the street. He's not begging people for money up on the corners. He lives in his house. He stays to himself. He takes care of his things. And then, he goes to work every day, sometimes 7 days a week. He does what he does to make money. He does construction. He works for a car lot doing repairs on their vehicles. It's just, whatever he can do to make money, he's a working person. He's not somebody who's sitting here wanting everybody to help him, And I know that doesn't say anything about the structure itself, but, you don't take somebody who's trying to do something and you make them homeless. And essentially, a demolition on a house makes them homeless. We don't want any more homeless people. Y'all drive up and down Mansfield Highway. Y'all seen our lovely array of people that we have coming up and down Mansfield Highway. Used to be during Thanksgiving and stuff, those people came to my house to eat. They would come over, they would eat Thanksgiving with us. And, some of them stayed and actually ate, some of them just left. They didn't feel comfortable eating or staying there and eating. They would just get their meal and go home, which is fine. Everybody a little different. So to some of Nathan's points, the house is running off a generator sometimes, but it also does have solar power. Nathan skimmed over that. The house does have solar power. So there is lighting inside the house. I don't remember what Nathan told me a year ago or so, what the illumination inside the house is, but that is exterior light, like sunlight, and then that's also lighting inside the house. It more than meets that with the solar power that's running the house. There's water to the house, so that's electricity, water. It does have a roof. The roof needs, one part of it needs to be re-shingled. It's been repaired. The tree that was stopping the repair on the foundation, I cut down myself. This isn't he's out there by himself. This is a neighborhood, not wanting to lose another. He's 60 years old, or this year he'll be 61 in about a month. He'll be 61 years old. And, the house was built in the 40s. It's hard to bring a house that's built in the 40s up to code for 2025. They're not the same era, they're not the same houses. Structurally, you make it sound, you make it livable, you make it safe. And, as far as, back in the day, you didn't pull permits on stuff, you just did it. Nowadays, you pull permits to get things taken care of. And it's a lengthier process to find people who can get you permits or can do the permits. And Amber has spent a lot of money on the house. And then, like she said, $13,000 to this foundation person for them to come do it halfway and then leave, not even knowing the process. There's no way to vet those people. They show up, you find them, they've done other work for other people in the neighborhood, they sound great, and then they just take your money and run. And that's exactly what happened. 13,000 literally took the money and run, and sounds like the whole project needs to be redone. You know, they fixed quite a bit. They replaced, I don't guess Nathan saw it when he was there, but they fixed the runners, the main beams underneath the house. They've replaced those. They've replaced the main runners around the outside of the house. They've replaced some of those. And then, yeah, the flood that came that basically filled up the trenches and keeps you from, if you're not wearing diamond suit, you can't get underneath the house to do the work, and nobody's going to drag their tools through that to get underneath there to do it. It doesn't even, you know, it doesn't make sense to do that. You got to wait, get the water out, and then, yeah, they should have dug trenches to drain the water, but, you know, apparently they weren't a reputable company. But again, there's not many ways to vet somebody. They just, you know, they sound good. You're like, hey, I trust you. You know, you think you can trust everybody, and then that's not what actually happens. So the foundation's in, you know, it's in process of being done. The roof is in the process. It's one part of the roof that needs to be repaired. When the foundation dropped, one of the trusses stayed up and the house dropped. So there was it wasn't sticking out of the roof, but it was protruding up, but it wasn't a broken, like it wasn't leaking inside the house through that, if you understand what I'm saying. So it's kind of sitting like this. It just kind of set up. But when they raised the foundation, it came back up and it leveled itself off. So that protrusion is no longer there. So as far as the house being safe to live in, structurally, the house is sound. It's been there since the 40s. We know how they built houses in the 40s. My house was built in 53. You could drive anything through that house and you could knock half the house down and the house would still be standing. You know, it's not like a modern house that I just saw coverage of up north somewhere when those winds came through. It blew over $1 million houses. Them things crumbled like you know, it's just ridiculous. The septic's functional, like Amber said, and that house has never been on city sewer. Septic is the only option for that place. Now, he lives, I'm sure you are familiar with the construction. So at the end of, like where Oak Crest neighborhood and I-20 are at, so he lives at the end house that's right there. There's a business right next to him, but he's the end house. So when they finish that construction, and because they're putting in sewer for the new construction, you would think they would be tying in his house, because there's several houses right there that don't have city sewer. They came in, and this was done back in early 2000s. They came in, they crushed all of our septic tanks, put you on city sewer, whether you wanted it or not. There wasn't an option. They just crushed your tanks in, you went to city sewer. But they never did finish out the project. You know, just like they never came in and repaired our roads after they put the water lines in, and you've got dips. It's roughly every 30 feet. Sometimes it's every 20 feet, depending on where they dug their trenches at. You've got dips. If you drive through our neighborhood, this is what it does through our neighborhood. You know, that doesn't pertain to James's house, but that's our neighborhood. You know, that's kind of where the city's left us throughout the years. And now they come in because they've got new development that's coming in. They want to come in and get rid of all the old houses, get rid of all the old people, move everybody out so that, you know, new construction can come in to take over. They just built a 5-bedroom or 5-house townhome next to my house. They want to do the same thing everywhere else in our neighborhood. Y'all got different ideas for what needs to go in our neighborhood than the people who's been there for 20, 30, 50 years. You know, when we cleaned up the rubbish around the property, we hauled off 250 tires, 300 tires. It was a ridiculous amount of tires. They don't get hauled off for free. Amber paid to haul off all them tires. It was, some of them I think were $1 a piece, and then the bigger tires were, $3 a piece. You know, that's a ton of money she spent on the property. And to come in and knock the thing down and clear it off would just be a complete waste of money. Her grandma, they built that house back in the 40s, I think. In 42. That's, by the way, this is James. But they built the house back in 42. So there's a sentimental value attached to the house. If your grandma's house or grandpa's house look like that, you know, they're sentimental. It tears Amber up every day looking at the house and what the condition used to be and what the condition is now. But it's a hoarder issue. It's a mental health issue. Like she said, it's hard to get anybody to, like Tarrant County doesn't want to help you unless you're homeless. If you have a structure that you live in, no matter what the condition is, there's no mental health services for you. If you're homeless, they give you all the mental health services you want. But if you live somewhere, you don't get those services. And James doesn't see that there's a problem with it. He's a helper, he's a collector. He collects everything. He does have a lot of bicycles, he's got a lot of lawnmowers, but he's got these so if somebody else needs parts off of them, they can come get parts off of them. He's a helper. He's the guy that if I needed a whatever for whatever, I'd call James and say, hey, you got one of them? Yeah, I got 3 of them. You want one? And then you just go get it, you know? And, you know, if y'all force him to vacate the property, he's going to be homeless. Legitimately homeless. Not homeless as in he can go stay at a shelter somewhere. It's just homeless. Kennedale doesn't provide that stuff. Y'all would be sending him to Fort Worth for Fort Worth to have to figure out what to do with. Because Kennedale doesn't have anything for homeless. There's no shelters in Kennedale for homeless people. There's nothing in Kennedale to help homeless people. Y'all would be putting them out, literally on the street. And then we would have another person standing up on the corner or getting in trouble with Kennedale PD for whatever the case. He doesn't do drugs. He doesn't, you know, he used to a long time ago. He doesn't do that anymore. As far as a person, he's cleaned his life up from all of that stuff. And, you know, this is basically just, he's already down. You just be kicking him while he's down. Yeah, we want the place cleaned up. We want the structure safe. But money only comes in so fast. The economy is hard right now for everybody. I've got 2 kids at the house and I make a decent living and I still struggle. You know, I work 45, 50 hours a week. It's still a struggle. And I've got a good job. I do electronics and stuff for companies. But there's only so much money. And when you take a big lump of that and you lose it because you put faith in somebody to do a project and then that money just vanishes, nobody gives you that money back. Yeah, you can go after them civilly, but if they didn't have, you know, the common sense to know what the code was and the permits were in the city, I mean, what kind of business structure do you think they actually have? The recourse to get that money back, it's probably not there, to be honest. You know, I'm sure everybody in here's had some kind of project they paid someone to do and then you just don't get it back, you know? You just say, well, never use them again. And so really what we're asking for is time. 30 days is not reasonable. 30 days is a start. We're coming into the rainy season again. You know, we don't know what the weather's doing. The other day, I've got shingles going for my house now that I've got to get up on my roof and repair. That, you know, the weather's changing on us. It's just weird weather, stuff that we don't know what it's going to do. His house probably fared better than most of the houses. You know, my house was built later, my shingles are leaving. His shingles are still in his house. I'm not trying to make excuses for him. It's a time thing. You know, 30 days, 90 days to clean up the yard, that's reasonable. To actually rebuild the structure to what Nathan's wanting it rebuilt to, that's not reasonable. Because it takes longer than that to make the money to be able to do it. It's just everything is expensive. Woods went up, nails have gone up, screws have gone up. Everything that you use to do construction has increased. And there's no outlook on it even coming back down. You know, food's gone, and nobody in here is immune to inflation or whatever it is. Everybody's out there wants to make more money, and then we have to pay the money for it. You know, it's a very emotional thing. You know, you're not deciding to tear down a house that nobody's living in. You're deciding to put somebody out on the street. You put him out on the street where there's no other options. He may relapse, go back into drug use. You don't know. That's not y'all's problem, but it's possible. How many people have you seen walking down the street that doesn't have some kind of drug issue? You know, just be honest. And I know most of them. They walk by my house every day, and I talk to them when they walk by my house. I talk to everybody. You know, it's just, we're asking for time. We're asking, I guess you say leniency to get the stuff done within, you know, a reasonable amount of time, but the structure's not going to be done within 90 days. There's no way. There's just not the money there for it. I mean, we got to get the foundation fixed because we're not allowed to do anything else until the foundation's done. You know, you can't do any of the work. You can't fix the inside of the house until the foundation's done. You couldn't paint the house until the foundation's done. Well, now we got to find a new foundation person and make the money to be able to pay the foundation person to come finish the job that apparently all has to be ripped out and redone again, that knows how to do the permits. Our permit office isn't exactly that handy with helping. They seem most of the time like they want more or new structures as opposed to the old structures, is what it seems like. The people who came in and tore down my fence next to me, that Nathan told me, let them tear it down, they'll give you a better fence. Yeah, I've got gaps to keep my dogs in my fence that's this far off the ground from his better fence that he allowed them to come in and tear my fence down. When he said, just let them do it, it'll be better. No, it's not. And they're selling those townhomes next to me for $300,000, $350,000 a piece. And that's our new construction. And then their contractor ran off on them for $200,000. I guess $13,000 is not bad when it's $200,000 that their contractor ran off on. So he gets rid of James, what's he gonna do? Start going after somebody else in the neighborhood? You know, another substandard structure that was built 40s or 50s. Our whole neighborhood is built in the 40s and 50s, except for the new structures that have come in the last couple of years. So that's about all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
you.
Is there any questions for Mr. Hall? Okay. I'll ask the staff to respond and summarize for us.
Sorry about the delay. I'm up here so much. Yeah, I should have that memorized, that password, but Tina, I'm going to be using the podium. Oh, you got it up already. Okay, so certainly would like to provide just a summary and a response to some of the items that he's mentioned, that they both mentioned. But I'll start by saying that, again, the case, James, he's been very cordial. I mean, we've, in my experience as a code enforcement officer, there's instances where they'll flip you they won't even work with you. At that point, we're just writing tickets every day at that point. And so the fact that we hadn't done that kind of just shows to the fact that he's willing to speak with us, and same thing with Amber and Derek as well. So I want to say it seems like they have a tight-knit group, but I think there's options out there. It's just whether or not someone's willing to take those options. And so, but again, this case really isn't about whether he's got a good heart, which I would completely agree. It's about the structure itself, the unsafe condition of it, and quite frankly, the liability that the city has allowing someone to occupy the structure, right? If something were to happen and the city were aware of it, and failed to take action on it, even drastic action if needed, it puts the city at a big liability. There's instances in cities where they've allowed or they knew about code compliance issues in commercial facilities and residential facilities, failed to take action, and resulted in some significant lawsuits because of loss of life or injury or something like that. So these codes are important. And in Kennedale, we don't have a 2025 code. You have a 2018 code, which hasn't really changed much from the previous 2015. There were some changes on the energy code. But a lot of these items that we're talking about tonight have been in the code since it came around. We're talking about basic minimum plumbing, basic minimum ventilation, lighting, exterior. Those parts of the provisions of the code have not changed, right? The shingles, there's been new materials that have come out, but really the major changes in building code the last 10, 15 years, a lot of it has to do with energy code, right? And energy code for a structure like this wouldn't even apply because, you want to go back to, you want to improve while you can, but it's, he's not going to be able to get R38 in his attic, if he doesn't have the room for it, right? He can't, I'm not asking him to rip down all the siding and re-insulate the walls to the new code, but the part of the building that doesn't have a wall, exterior wall, you need to frame it up and you need to put some bad insulation, you got to seal it up. And so that's kind of where we're at, but I just kind of want to provide you with some visual some slides here. This is from Google Earth. This is the subject property that you have right here. And again, Google Earth, This isn't drone footage or anything like that that's recent. This is snapped whenever Google updates that, right? So you can actually go back and look at all the aerials from years before. And I imagine this is a pretty old photo. But it just shows the history or the challenges that I know this department has had at this particular location, just based off of the accumulation. This is a snippet from our current GIS property, or GIS system that you can pull up on the website. Again, this photo I want to say is old, older, and there a lot of this area. So like right here in this particular area, he did a great job clearing this out, clearing this out. A lot of those tires that he was talking about have been removed. But when we walked it back in November of '24. These areas have been reoccupied with structures, so there's still some areas that have been cleared, but there's quite a bit more, in fact, on the front end that you can see that you didn't see before, which puzzles me, because if the goal is to get this all removed, we continue to see more and more stuff being brought in. And it's in the front. I don't know if it's being pulled out or being brought in, and that's the question. And so this is back in '23. Where we often have vehicles parked on the street and various discarded materials. You can see we were there with the police department. And this is 6 months probably after I come about, and the police department kind of reached out. They needed some help. And so they're saying we're constantly having to run off certain folks here in town on this side that frequent this location. Again, he's talked about how he helps quite a bit of people in the area, and I'm sure he does. And I don't knock him for that, but the police department's not going to be called code compliance out for something that isn't become some sort of either criminal nuisance or public nuisance in the area. So when your own police department's calling us out for help, it's quite telling. Here's some of just some of the things that you see out and about. So there's nothing wrong with having a dumpster, right? But it can't be overflowing. There's nothing wrong with having, a gate or a chimenea. I hope I said that right, but some of these other finishings. But we ask that you get that stored up out of view. And I believe the city at one point years ago probably told them that, hey man, just put up a fence and just hide it. But the code still says in your code of ordinances that property's got to be clear of accumulation. Like I spoke to, is that if you have to respond to an emergency there, you got to be able to get in and out safely. So there is a concern with that. Again, these are older pictures from the start of the case. Here's, again, another gentleman there that come and go. He's not here tonight, but he's who knows where. It's always something new, somebody new there. Here's a real classic car. So there's nothing wrong with having an antique car or truck. It does have to be tagged, but it has to be running. But there's nothing wrong with, I'm a big fan of the old John Deeres you see out in the country. They're rusted up, they got a patina. There's nothing wrong with having that. It's a hobby vehicle. But if it's the accumulation of things that becomes the issue, because that's going to harbor rodents. Again, here's a couple more pictures that were taken a while back. And so I'm just kind of showing some of the history that we've had here. So what I have circled here, this is the generator that he's been running off of. I want to say that's probably that solar panel there that's there. I want to say I doubt that there was a permit pulled for that. That's important to have tied into your electric system. It's a major issue. Solar panels and lithium batteries and things like that are a big source of can be, if not done properly, causes for fires. And so this thing is running, but imagine, next door, and again, there's some of the neighbors aren't calling, complaining. They got some similar issues, but they know each other, so they're probably not going to call. But we got new people moving in right next door that I imagine will. But you can't, if you have a generator running next door all night, all day, that's probably going to be a source of complaints at some point, right? But that's been going on for some time. Again, this is early on. This is what we encountered, and again, we started this in really April, and we're all the way back into October of that year. So in April of '23, here in October of that year, we just weren't seeing any major changes. But they got to work, so they started clearing out some things, to his credit. So that's that accessory structure, I want to say, that's back there. So they have cleared out some areas, and so we were making some pretty good progress, and we were happy to update the city attorney or the prosecutor each month as that it was happening. Here's another thing, how we have it organized, right? You got tires that are covered, so water's not getting in there. You don't get the mosquitoes, you don't get the West Nile, the Zika, and everything that people are concerned about in a community. But there was some substantial progress that they were making, and that's allowed them to get to the actual structure to make those repairs. But here again is that roof assembly that is buckled. Back in 23, you have, obviously shingles that have fallen off. But this shingles usually have depending on which one you buy, a 20, 30-year span. This one's long past its lifespan, right? But you can see where the roof assembly here has buckled. You do have some exterior structural members that are weathered because they're exposed to the elements. You have some siding here that is dilapidated, fallen off, missing, broken, damaged. So then what you got there is wood rot, and you got water infiltration. Here in this, correct me if I'm wrong, but am I looking at is this where your septic system was? No? Okay. This is on the other side. This is behind the house, I believe. Here's that roof assembly here. But again, just another visual there. This right here is where they did some majority of the foundation work, right, along actually the whole thing. But this is the area that was exposed. Again, we got some interior photos. Those were taken from the exterior of the property, just because you can see inside. We have yet to obtain, consent to inspect the inside to verify any of these conditions of the interiors. This case is solely based on exterior conditions, structural concerns that I have. Here again is that roof assembly, and I want to say, this lumber pile here has since been removed, and underneath, if I'm not mistaken, his septic system was somewhere in this location. But like we heard tonight, I guess it is operable. The question isn't really if you have water; it's if you have active running water to a fixture, hot and cold water. That's what the code says. People get their water cut off all the time, and they're still going to have to drink water. They'll still put a 5-gallon bucket and use the commode as needed, right? We're not trying to get them to sign up for subscribe to the city water services, even though it's a code requirement. But the code requirement isn't that you pay the city for water. The code requirement is if you have running water to a fixture, hot and cold, right? So that's what the code requirement is, particularly when it comes to plumbing. Again, some more, if you notice the date, this is October of the year after. And our code compliance have been going by, just checking progress. I'm just like, hey, go by, see how he's doing, see, we need to really schedule this meeting, because it was a concern as it was starting to revert back to its condition. Here, again, you see the roof assembly was tarped. We got some more vehicles out here. A lot of them, either tags are out, flats, things like that nature. But we got furniture out in the roadway just about. Here's a kind of a close-up of the roof assembly back on that date. Here is, this is November 1st. So yeah, this is November 1st. And you can see this is the repair that were made to the floor joists. It's missing rim boards, but when we looked at some of the fasteners there, really didn't see enough. Didn't see, I got another photo of the interior where the piers are. And that's a damaged pier. That's not plumb or flush where that thing is sitting on it. It's kind of cracked. And so I've got some major concerns about that. Now, the contractor could run off, but we're talking about with these foundation repairs, we require, often you get an engineered foundation. So you can call that engineer and you can have them come out. In fact, that contractor is supposed to do that. And so have that engineer send me their inspection report, signing off on what they design on the installation. Happens all the time. Structure, foundation, all these foundation companies out, that's the process. And so it's really mind-boggling for them to say they didn't know to call an inspection to begin with. But again, this is back in November. This is that day we made that last inspection. You can see we've got areas that were cleared have been now reoccupied with rubbish on that particular day. Again, this is visible from the exterior. We've got some extension cords running to light fixtures. That's probably spliced in somehow. I don't know what this is. It kind of looked like a arc fault, which would be essentially like a flash of electricity, maybe causing some burning. That could be soot. That could be, I don't know exactly what that is. Perhaps if it's open to the exterior and you're trying to keep warm, maybe you're setting a fire and you got all the soot kind of going in. That I don't know, right? But that when I noticed that, I was like, please, and it's pretty close to this plug, and I'm like, man, please tell me that's not just a fire hazard waiting to happen, and it certainly appears that way. Here's a photo that Todd took of, at some point, the first time I met James, he was walking down the street yelling at me, and I said, hey man, I'm just here to talk to you. And are you with the gas company? I said, no. He said, oh, and his demeanor completely changed. Well, what can I do for you? So, when I noticed this, I'm like, well, maybe he's got some history with that, but that is not the correct way to run a gas line to the home. And he doesn't have gas service, but if he ever wants it, that's a code violation right there, just having that. If you don't have gas, you want to run electric, we would probably ask them to pull it, but Atmos they don't, depending on what side of the meter is, they're not dealing with anything on the other side of the meter. But that's definitely not something that Encore would have approved. And again, back in the day, I guess you could make repairs and not worry about permits, but this is the reason why permits are important. Now, there's that accessory structure we were talking about in the back. Again, some of this has been cleaned up and organized. This was scattered about, and they've kind of set it in different pockets, which we appreciate because it stages, the next haul off, right? Again, well, it was like, I don't know where all this stuff has come from, right? This is today. So this was today, and this was this afternoon, and it's starting to pile up again. We've got a truck out there, again, this lawnmower, I'm not sure where any of this stuff is coming from because it doesn't, I don't recall seeing it before. So I don't, him and somebody's bringing this stuff in is all I can say. And so that's again, we write a ticket today, right, based off of that. Do we do that? No, because we want to have an honest conversation. We want to be as tactful and polite and respectful as possible because we are talking about, like we heard tonight, some of the social issues that have to be navigated. But this is, again, there's a process to go. There's services out there that are available. Here, we noticed that they're making some improvements to the roof. I see decking. I'm not sure this was the area that he was talking about, that get blown off. He may have been talking about his personal house, but we do require roof permits. I'm not trying to get any money out of these folks just because there's a permit, but we want to make sure that the decking is securely fastened, that it's the right thickness, and that it has a membrane, and that it's installed properly, right? So if there's some roof repairs that need to be done, which we know that need to be done, again, that's one of the things we asked them to do is secure the proper permits for that. And another reason for the permits is that we hold the contract so that we hold them accountable, right? They fail the inspection, you get your money's worth, and depending on how your contract goes, you don't pay them $13,000 right up front, or maybe you do, but a lot of these guys will say, hey, give me enough to cover labor and materials up front and pay the rest when it's done. And so there's some leverage that the property owner has. I don't know if that's occurred. That's what I'm accustomed to in my world, but if you cut a check for somebody right off the bat and they never come back, you probably need to get with the police department and file, theft of service or, something like that, right? There's systems in place that they can go try to recoup those particular costs, file liens. But this is going to be hard to see, but this is the timeline here, and it goes before, what you see here in red is where your current staff is started. But back in my staff report, I talk about, we've got code history go back to 2007. I mean, I don't know who was here at the time, but there was a gentleman named George Linder. I think he was a code enforcement officer here in town. Got some mixed reviews, I hear, but regardless, he had a case back in 2020, notice of violation, rubbish again, notice of violation. These aren't tickets, by the way, these are letters. Hey, please come into compliance. Again in March, again in July of 2020. He wrote a citation in May of 21, in September again of 21. I got here in 22, December of 22, so a couple months after, that's when I started getting calls about it, and that's when I first sent a notice of violation to both the property owner and the tenant. So this is starting here from April of 2023. We didn't get any response. I had to call, get the utility building to give me his phone number. Finally got a hold of him, gave him some more time, wasn't any improvement. Finally had to issue a citation in June of 23. And that's what kept getting reset. And so in December of 23, not last December, but December of 23, that's when we issued the foundation permit. It expired in June of 23. From June until then, it's been driving by, checking progress, where you at with this, no contact at all. Finally had to issue, after we did a follow-up, I had to issue a substandard notice. And so with that, it's advising them of this is more than just a notice of violation. I'm declaring your property substandard at this point. Now, I can go about that a couple different ways. I can placard it and give them the boot or anything. Some cities handle it that way. I didn't feel that was the way to do it. I've had already previously written citations that weren't effective. And so at that point, I said, I intend to schedule a public hearing before this body to get this resolved. And of course, in December, January, February, we've had to reset this. So here we are, 90 days out from then, or more than 90 days out from then, that there hasn't been any improvement. In fact, it's gotten worse there. And so here today, we're having that public hearing. Again, they'll come back up and I'm happy to give them a last word and rebut anything that I'm saying. But again, the case is simply about the structure, not so much about the character of the tenant or the property owner, which I would agree with. There's options out there for them. I've told them right up front, I'm not trying to take your house from you. It's we just need to come into compliance. But if you need to make the decision what's best for you, if it's financially a good decision for you to put money into this particular structure, or sell it and buy something, a double wide or single wide, or some affordable housing out in the county where you don't have to deal with, your code enforcement out there, or police, we probably stuff to do with that. But, there's options out there. There's the code. We allow people to build an accessory dwelling unit. So maybe there's a family member that wants to build an accessory dwelling unit in the backyard. They've got to come to this body to get a sign off on that. There's, if you're going to spend money, maybe there's a room addition that could be built on a home to house a family member. So there are other options out there. This is going to sound, I don't want to speak ill or anything, but if it doesn't sound like he's got friends, but I don't know if any of them are willing to have them reside with him because of the things that he chooses to do. So again, I'm not trying to talk bad about anything like that, but I would say that there are some options out there. And so we do have weather that happens, but construction has not stopped in the city. And so you deal with weather delays, and since that notice, that substandard notice from November went in, there still could have been some sort of improvement. In fact, at least getting rid of stuff, but more stuff looked like it's coming in. So again, happy to answer any questions that you have from the board, but I'll go ahead and yield it back to the applicant. And I don't know if, James, if you want to speak, you certainly can.
Just a moment. Mr. James?
Yes,
Would you
ma'am.
allow-
I'm James Hardy.
James Hardy, thank you.
I don't know who I should give this to, you or Nathan, but I need a copy of it.
Sure, I can make a copy.
That's from a contractor, by the way.
She's gonna need to swear you in.
Call for those after it gets done, yeah.
The back part of the house where Nathan was showing you the roof was coming down, that part of the house is being taken off. That was the washroom. That whole side that he showed y'all where the tarp was a garage. It was an add-on. And that was before we ever moved here. The rafters have already been replaced. That was bad. On the front side, that tarp is no longer there. Like you said, the plywood is there. It's not the right plywood. I've got to get it. It's $69 a sheet. And I know it takes 5/8, right? The decking,
It just depends on your rafter spacing. 5/8.
it's 24 inches.
Yeah, 5/8 will usually work.
Okay, it's 2x4s that is the rafters up there. It's not like you get now that's already pre-made. They just run up to the peak. There's nothing underneath it but the ceiling. All right, I don't know what that calls for nowadays, but I used to build houses from the ground up. I shot the foundations, I did the yard, clearing it, everything. So there ain't much he can tell me about building a house, but I do know what I'm doing. I understand I need to get with him and find out exactly what their specs are, but I know when I was doing it, it was 1/2 inch. And nowadays, they're using 2x6s for your joists and all that. The yard, the stuff that was out in the front, is my furniture that goes in my house. All right, I just got all that stuff. So the pictures he took today is the stuff I just brought to go back in my house, because they said I had to clear everything out of my house in order for them to do the foundation. So all the stuff that he's showing you in the yard, most of it's out of my house. It goes back in the house. It ain't got ruined by sitting out there. I'm 61 years old. I work 7 days a week. It's not easy for me to take off work like I did when the stuff first started. I lost my job because of it. But does that matter to them? No, it don't. Now I got back in with the car lot and all them that I work for, and I still work 7 days a week. I have a 3-year-old daughter that he was talking about. Yeah, she was there one night with her mother because they went to the haunted house with me and I was taking them back. He's never been inside of my house, never. He says he's scared. Well, then that's his problem, because I got thousands of people that come in and out of my house every day. I help a lot of people. I feed a lot of people. I work on their cars. The car that's out front, that gold truck, it's not mine. She blew her motor. She lives in Oklahoma. The truck's supposed to have been moved yesterday, and she couldn't get the wrecker to come get it. Okay, that's going. And the lawnmowers and stuff that was out front in front of that truck, that belongs to another guy named Chris, that his moped was sitting right in front of it, that he was taking back with him. He just left it there long enough to go get something to eat. And the other stuff that's out there, there's wood out there. Yeah, it's brand new wood that I got for the house. I'm doing everything I can to try to comply with them. Sergeant Carlson that was here, which up and left, he can tell you more about me than anybody in this city. Because me and Carlson goes way back from when I was getting in trouble. What can I say? I'm doing what I can. My daughter and my wife lives in Dallas because this man right here says my house is unsafe, so I moved them out. They can't even come visit me because of this man right here. They call the cops out and they call CPS out on me, which is ridiculous. Yeah, I got dogs. They're doing what they're supposed to outside, but no, the officer said that there was dog poop in my house. Had never been in it. So he got CPS called out on me. Everything they did was unfounded, but still yet they're causing me problems by doing that. And Carlson will tell you, I help the police force, I help everybody I can. And he'll tell you that. What more does the city want? My house is old, I'm old. I'm doing what I can. You know, but I don't cause problems for nobody. Never mind.
I guess one of the issues that we have, but there's not a clear understanding of what you're allowed to repair on your property and what has to have a permit. As a homeowner, you know, you could repair anything on your property, it didn't matter. I put in my own water heater, I repaired lots of stuff on my own property, I've repaired things in other houses I've lived in. You didn't have to go get permits for everything you wanted to do. If I want to sneeze outside, it sounds like I got to get a permit to sneeze. It's just ridiculous. If you own the property, you should be able to repair your property and do whatever. Or there needs to be a very clear understanding written somewhere of what exactly you're allowed to repair and what you're not allowed to repair. And if the city's going to make it so difficult on somebody to repair their house that they have to put out money to hire contractors and hire all this, that's just substandard structure after the next one, because the next person they'll clean up the outside and the inside will fall apart because they can't afford to go get a contractor to fix something. There's no clear understanding on what you could fix, what she's allowed to fix. Water heater goes out at your house. Maybe you got a friend that does water heaters, but they can't pull permits. You know, are you not allowed to get your water heater fixed now because you can't afford to get a permit and a contractor? You know, it's the work, we can do the work ourselves. We can repair the stuff ourselves, maybe not the foundation, but we can repair the roof and the other things inside that, you know, not the electrical, because I understand how important that is. That black mark that he pointed on the wall, that was spray paint, that wasn't a burn. You could tell the plug wasn't burned. It wasn't flash arc. I've seen flash arc, I've been this close to it when it goes off. You know, that wasn't flash arc. And being from the outside, taking a picture to the inside, you can't tell what things are. There's been a lot of issues between our neighborhood and the city because he mentioned George. I don't know if any of y'all remember George. George was an interesting guy. And then before him, we had Bruce. And I don't know if y'all remember Bruce, the motorcycle Bruce. He went to code enforcement. After that, it was put it behind a fence and we don't see it. And then George came in, put it behind a fence and we don't see it. The next guy that came in after George, I don't think that was Nathan. I think there was still someone in the middle. Yeah, it was still put it behind the fence. We don't care. Nathan gets here. We care about everything on this property. I understand that may be what the code says, but that's not what it's been in our neighborhood I've lived in that neighborhood, I think, since 2001. You know, to come in, and I'm not saying it was a quick process for him to come in and decide that he wants to tear down James's house or to bring it to y'all, for y'all to make a decision to tear down his house. But it wasn't a quick process to get there. It wasn't a quick process for the property to end up like it is. We're putting money where we can. Like I said, I've got kids. You know, you can only put out so much money out of your own income. James puts his own money into it. Amber's put a ton of money into it. Not that that necessarily matters to y'all. It's not your money. It's not your problem. But I'm sure somewhere down the line, y'all got a family member that's real similar to James. Everybody has at least one somewhere. And so we're just asking, you know, we don't need the city's help. We don't need the city's money. We don't need anything from the city other than let us fix it. Let us fix it without spending all this money on contractors to do it, or tell us what can and can't be done by us. You know, that the Amish don't get permits to build barns or houses. They just get together as a group and they just build a house, build a barn. And apparently it takes 24 hours to build a giant barn. That's amazing stuff. But so, yeah. And a lot of those pictures, yeah, they look bad. But a lot of it's changed. Some of it's come back. Hoarding don't stop overnight. It really is a mental health thing. But we're on James all the time. You know, this needs to move out. This needs to move out. Get rid of this. So we are trying. Nathan kind of makes it sound like we're not trying. We are trying. I mean, I take drone pictures of the property, and then I put the drone pictures in James's mailbox so he can see what his property looks like. I just did that, like a month ago, something like that. That way he can see what his property actually looks like. Because if you're not seeing what everybody else is seeing, you don't notice it. The first time he ever seen what his property looked like, he said, wow, I can't believe it looks like that. because he'd never actually seen what his property looks like. You know, you get into a mindset and you don't see what it is. And that's when the changes really started to happen. And then I took new drone pictures, kind of to reinforce, we're headed back down this path, let's get things moving again. And to fix the foundation, they had to pull everything out of the house and out of the rooms to do the foundation. I don't know if y'all have had foundation work, but they've got to lay down a machine in the middle and it measures all different spots. And so everything that was in those rooms had to come outside. And the stuff that hadn't been, and foundation didn't get finished, stuff can't go back inside. You know, it's like one hurdle after another to try to get it fixed, but we're doing what we can in the meantime.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I feel like we've had a pretty long conversation here, and we probably are going to go into more challenging conversation. So I'd like us to recess for 5 minutes, please. And it is 7:28, so how about let's go to 7:35? Thank you. Time warning unless, Nathan, you feel like. Okay, I will reconvene at 7:35 as move forward with the agenda. We did allow the property owner response. In summary, Ms. Hardy, do you have anything else you'd like to share?
The only thing that I would like to say is that the answer always seems to be sell the place and find him somewhere else to live. Put him out in the country, put him in the county, get him out of city limits. We were out of city limits. Kennedale took us in several years ago. You know, they bought us for a fire truck. We never wanted it. We wanted to stay county. It was a lot more fun whenever we were county, a lot easier. So if I go buy him another place in the county, how long is it going to be before a city takes that spot over too? You know, how far out do I keep moving him away from everybody else and away from the resources, his job, his wife and kid in Dallas? You know, like how far out do I have to put him to keep him safe? I mean, you guys seen him. He doesn't have a lot of time left. He doesn't. He's been battling cancer. He had a tumor removed last year. I'm just trying to keep a roof over his head for the time that he does have left. That's all I gotta say.
Thank
Do you have any questions for me?
And is that appropriate to ask both you, Nathan, and that Ms. Hardy for questions?
Discussion and action, you're welcome to ask.
Okay. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to say before we open up for discussion?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, is there any action that any of the members of the board would like to put forward so that we can then move into discussion? And I believe that what the recommendation was is at 30 days in order to vacate, repair, or demolish, or time with a plan, and the plan to be managed within 90 days to come into compliance. And Nathan, if you could give us that, a little clarification there on the time. If it's less than, when would the plan be due versus the 90 days to complete
Thank you.
that you brought up?
Just to clarify before you, if anyone makes a motion, if you'll have the discussion, and then when you feel you're ready, someone can make a motion after that. But to answer that point, the ordinance, actually, the way if it says it's not to exceed 90 days, that's what the ordinance says. But what they'll do is they'll return back to this board to provide you an update based off if that's the decision you go, then you can make that part of the motion that they report back. So that would be next month, within 30 days, provide an update where you're at. The request that we had was that they provide a detailed construction schedule if they need more than the 30 days or even the 90 days. It's just they need to be able to provide that. And so if you've got a contractor, you know, they should be able to provide a construction schedule for you to review. Now, if they don't do that, that's the request, is if they fail to do those things that you've ordered them to do, is that at that point you consider, when they return, that you issue an order to have the property demolished. And again, any decision that you made can be appealed into district court today, in the future, anything like that. So there are remedies to seek appeal out there.
Thank you. And he kindly pointed out process to me there. Thank you, Nathan. We can open for discussion, so I am going to open this up for discussion now. And I'll go to Patrick first, or?
Well, I just want to, Nathan, just to clarify something for people. We have a building code. And if a man wants to work on his own home, he has to meet the code that we have. It doesn't prevent someone from repairing their own home or if they have to get a permit. But anybody can repair their own home within the qualifications that they have. If they're not a licensed electrician, then they have to have a licensed electrician at least check their work, whatever. I don't know all the details. But the building code is what you're demanding. Doesn't preclude me or Amanda or anybody doing work at your home as long as you do it according to the building code, correct?
That's a great question, a great point. So the International Residential Code, we've adopted the 2018, Chapter 1 talks about work that requires a permit and work that doesn't require a permit. And there are a variety of areas there that are listed. Repairs often don't require a permit depending on what it is. So a water heater, for example, that is something that does require a permit because often you've got to protect the water supply and there could be gas and electricity involved. Now, the question as to who can perform the work. If you are a property owner, let me clarify. If this is your homestead, this is where you live. If you are the homesteaded property owner, you can perform the work. You still have to pull the permit, right? And there's remedies to that as far as costs. We can talk about that. I'm happy to entertain, fees and things like that. Absolutely. And there's two things that a permit requires. So the permit itself and the required submittals, but also the contractor registration. So that's where we do the license check. But if you're a homeowner and it's homesteaded, this is where you live, you can do your own plumbing, you can do your own electrical, you can do your own mechanical work and foundation. You can build the home all by yourself. You have to register. There's no fee to do that. But just that what it does is it puts you in charge over the permit. You become the permit holder, but you are responsible to meet the minimum code requirements, right? And we've adopted the 2018, which was 2 cycles ago, almost 3 coming up now, so it is an older code. But again, like I talked about the energy code, there's certain provisions where you don't have to meet things. But plumbing, I do talk to property owners all the time. I talk to landlords a lot that want to perform the work themselves. They don't want to have to register. It's not your homesteaded though. Unfortunately, you're going to need to hire a licensed electrician to work on that. There's property owners that are very handy that know that are familiar with electrical work, even if they're not, and they perform the work. Before we energize the system, that's where the inspection comes in. So we'll recommend what corrections have to be made, even if they don't have a license, if they are the homesteaded property owner. Now, in this case, Amber is the property owner, but it's not her residence. So at her own home, she could do her own work. She can register. James Hardy resides there, but he doesn't own the property. He's not the homesteaded property owner. So that's where we do require a contractor, a general contractor often, which only has to provide liability insurance, and that's to protect everybody, right? But there's no state license required to be a GC. And so if I'm a property owner, not a homesteaded, if I don't live there, I can still register as a GC. I just have to provide the insurance, right, for it. And I'm over the job now. Now your tradesmen, your tradespeople is your mechanical that has a TDLR license. Same thing with electricians. Those are licensed trades. Same thing with plumbing. It's a licensed trade. So if you are unable to meet the exemption for the homesteaded property owner, then you do have to register as a contractor and you still have to pull the permit. If the cost is an issue, it's not an issue in my department. We can talk about that. Now, if they hire a contractor, right, that contractor's getting paid quite a bit, and so the cost that the city has to perform the inspection, if I have to send a third-party inspector out, we don't have a plumbing inspector, so I have to hire a third party out there, there's a cost to the city for that, and so there is a cost that has to be covered. But, one of the things last year when they were doing the moving around of items is, hey, come get a garage sale permit, I'll just give you one. It's normally $10, but you can get American Pickers to come out. There's a lot of stuff out there, there's some cool stuff too. I got a photo of a sword, there's a bunch of cool stuff out there. We've kind of offered those types of things. Now, there's certain things I can waive and certain things I can't, right? Based off of what the council adopts as a fee schedule. But I'm willing to have the conversation with city manager, whatever it is that we got to do. If that's the route we go, the problem is we're talking about a foundation permit that was pulled over a year ago. And since then, there just hasn't been any change. And so if they need time, Our position is they've had ample time. So at this point, again, we're hoping to solidify that timeline, if any.
Nathan, given all that, heard what you said, what work could they perform on this property? Obviously not the foundation. That's got to be permitted. Makes good sense. I don't think they would want to try to do that themselves. Beyond that, what work could they do on this property, specifically the house, to bring it up to code?
Siding, windows, roofing, painting, flooring, those, if it's, well, there's the subfloor, which we want to look at, but like cosmetic stuff, carpet, you don't need
Finished
permits for
flooring.
any of that. The roofing does require a permit. They just would need to register. If they want to perform, I mean, we can certainly willing to work with them, but the trades, the licensed trades, that does require a
Electrical,
license.
plumbing, foundation.
Correct. In their case, they'd have to have a licensed electrician, a licensed plumber, because the property does not, that's not where Amber resides, the property owner.
Right.
And so they'll have to hire a licensed professional to do that.
So potentially, if they found a reputable foundation company, pull a permit, get the foundation fixed, probably going to fix some of the roof issues, level some things out, maybe need a little bit of work done there. We're really down to plumbing and electrical at that point as far as having to get permits. Inside the house, very likely they can go back in there and put in finished flooring, paint, windows, things like that. Does that sound somewhat close?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the trades are the trades. Those are licensed trades by the state. I can't do anything about that. But like a roof, you don't need a license to do roofing.
Okay.
But now you do have to register, and so they can call their insurance company to get, general liability insurance. It's for the job.
Yeah.
So that will have to be done to issue the permit, but it's not I was going to say impossible. I don't think that's a word. It's very possible to actually do.
Okay. And again, with the process, if we move forward with the order to vacate, they've still got a small window of time, 30 days, 90 days, whatever, to start showing progress in that area to stop that process of vacating by getting the foundation coated and brought it up to pay. And if we're getting that work done, that could stop this process of vacating, having them vacate, correct?
Well, so our position is that habitable and should be vacated so that those repairs can be made. So I don't want to be on record saying it's okay to stay there in the condition of the home itself. And so whatever your order would be, we would respect that and give them the time to do that. But I have deemed the home substandard, and because of that, the following part of that is to vacate the premises. Now, whether they do that or not is their decision. If you fail to vacate a property that's been deemed substandard, that is a misdemeanor as well. So that's something that on the enforcement side that cities we would consider or look at if necessary. Like I mentioned before, it sounded like, well, James mentioned that they stayed there one night, but prior to that, they'd been there before. I won't let them come back, or I won't let them stay there anymore. So I want to caution you all that I don't believe it's safe for anybody, children included.
But make sure I understand, though, we move forward, we pass the order to vacate. They still have time to bring to you a construction schedule, get a contractor specifically. I think the primary issue right now is the foundation, and get that foundation secured up. And with a timeline with that and showing you progress on that, whether he's staying there at that time or not, they could still avoid the situation where we're having to have that house demolished, correct?
Correct.
So they still have an opportunity here. What'd you say, 90 days?
That's our
30 days
request,
for
and
the
that
list.
comes from the ordinance not to exceed 90 days.
To exceed 90 days,
I believe there's some language in there about granting extensions if they've shown that progress.
considerable
And,
progress.
correct. And so what would happen is if you decided to order that property be vacated and then provide the, kind of in line with the recommendation, is they would come back next month, same meeting time, first Thursday of the month, provide an update to you all so that they are held accountable, and staff is held accountable as well. If there's any issues that happen in the next 30 days, if, it's, hey, they didn't give me a permit, I tried, and Nathan's being, he's having a bad day, or whatever the case is, we can have that conversation.
Okay. House is built in 41, but there's no way that they can say, well, we're going to bring it back up to code for 1941. It has to be to the 2018 code.
Yes, that's
As far as
correct, as far as
foundation, electrical,
foundation. And again, so like, for example, the roof assembly, the rafters are where they are. So if they're 2x4 rafters and they're spaced 24 inches on center or 18 inches on center, what they're proposing to put in like 5/8 decking, it has a span rating, and that's sufficient for it. You meet the 2018 code, right? The only thing that we have to look at is the energy code, really, because your plumbing hasn't changed. You got to have mixing valves. Your water heater's got to be working, right? Those things haven't changed. The only thing that really has changed is energy code. Now, let's make it more energy efficient so they can save some money, but I'm not going to make them meet, a standard that can't be met. And the code actually provides remedy for that, even in historical structures, which this hasn't been deemed historical, but it was 1941. It certainly, it doesn't make sense to hold them, if they don't have the wall cavity to squeeze in R20 in there, that doesn't make sense, right? So let's at least get it insulated with something. And so that's what our ask has been.
Thank you. Ms. Hollins, I believe you have some questions for Nathan?
There it goes. Sorry. Hi. Can you please clarify how the courts are involved? So I just want to make sure the courts were involved when the citations were issued and they went to court to handle the citations. And then according to what's allowed here, we are allowed to decide if it can go forward with demolition without the court involvement?
Correct. So to an extent, there's two types of courts. So when we issued a citation, it's for a code violation, it's a Class C misdemeanor, so it's municipal court. And so there's no jail time involved in any of that. All that is a fine that can't exceed $2,000 per day
Right.
per violation. And that's the cap on municipal court. What you decide, and if they appeal that, there's no appeal to city council to get remedy. The appeal has to go to district court. So that's how the Board of Adjustment is set up.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Can you tell me if there's been any known criminal activity on the property
I can
within
tell
the
you,
past several years?
sure, I can tell you what the police department has told me, and that's absolutely yes. They've had some history. They've kind of spoken to some of that as well.
Do you know specifically what criminal activity?
I don't. I really don't. I want to say there's. I probably shouldn't even get into what I believe
Sure.
was there. I just know the police department have been out there, calls for service.
Okay.
James himself referenced Captain Carlson, but he was pointing over here is actually. One point.
Do you know if those calls for service came from within the residence or other people outside of the residence?
If I recall correctly, the fire department has actually had to respond to assist some folks there.
Okay.
I want to say I was told that by the fire department,
So it might have been a medical emergency?
possibly.
Okay. Do you believe that the 90-day timeframe to, I guess it would be, 90 days to, we would give them 90 days to get a plan to you, and then 30 days we would have a checkup on that to see where we're at? Am I saying that correctly? I'm sorry.
Well, whoever motions what they want, if they want to exceed that, they can. But the request that we had was that these issues be resolved within 90 days. If the request was within 30 days, if they can't meet that in 30 days, to provide us a construction schedule that outlines the time frame on when we can expect that to come into compliance.
Okay, because based on the pictures that you showed us, 90 days is not, I don't think that can be done in 90 days, unless you had a 10-man crew out there, right? So, okay. Let's talk about demolition real quick. So who pays for the demolition?
It's a good question. So if it's ordered to be demolished, that's at the cost of the property owner. If they fail to do that, then the city, if it wants to see it demolished, the city would have to pay to have it demolished. And then to recoup the cost of that, have to file a lien on the property.
Okay. So if the cost of the demolition falls on the owner, how long do they have to follow through with that?
If it's ordered to be demolished within 30 days, they have to, 30 days to have that.
Within 30
Yeah,
days.
pull the demo permit and get it down. get it
Okay.
raised, cleaned up.
And then they still own the property?
Yeah, they would still own the property.
Okay.
Correct.
Do you feel that the city has done everything they can to work with the homeowner?
I do.
Do you feel that this is a last resort, or do you feel that the city has more leeway?
I feel that it is a last resort. The demolition, a request to demolish would be the last resort. I believe we've exhausted all other measures to bring this property into compliance within a reasonable time frame. That's the question. 2 years, I would say, we've exhausted that reasonable time frame.
So I think it needs to be said that a request to demolish someone's home is very serious. And I don't think that anyone up here takes that lightly. Ms. Hardy, can you answer a question for me, please?
Yes, ma'am.
First, I want to commend you for coming in tonight and speaking to all of us. I know that that can be, what you're doing is very brave, and I want you to be acknowledged for that. I also want to acknowledge you for taking in a family member, taking them under your wing and taking responsibility for them. That is a very difficult situation to be in. I acknowledge that you feel responsible for your uncle, but you are the property owner. And so ultimately, all of the responsibility for the property will fall on your back. Your uncle is sort of like a tenant, if you will, right, of yours. So let's say that the house is fixed. Let's say that that this committee gives the extension, you get a plan together, things come together, we give extensions, it gets fixed. In a year, would it be back to the same situation that you're in now?
So a little backstory. This has always been an issue, right? Living down the street, I was able to hold his hand. I was able to walk by every now and then and say, hey, what's that? Let's not put that there, right?
Right.
A few years back, I moved out of the neighborhood and I moved across town. And so I was not out of sight, out of mind. And that's whenever it got as bad as it did. And yeah, I would drive by every now and then, but I wasn't on top of it the way that I was prior to. And so over the last 2 or so years, we've been trying to work on getting back to that. So James and I have a lot of conversations. I'm sure you heard him mumbling the whole time Nathan was talking, right? He's not always the easiest person to talk to, so sometimes you just have to sit him down and yell at him really hard and get through his thick skull. And it requires a lot. It's like an unruly teenager sometimes. With me being back in the neighborhood, and I have been for a little bit now, I can hold him to that standard again, and I have been. And as Nathan told you, whenever those citations came through, we were coming in and meeting, it was monthly to every 6 weeks, something along those lines, with the prosecutor, and having a timeline in front of James, because the prosecutor sat down with us each time, and us being us and Nathan, and said, okay, what's the next priority? Okay, what have you done in this time frame? And he was taking care of things. Whenever someone brings it to his attention, he sees it. But it's out of sight, out of mind kind of thing for him. That's just his life. He doesn't see it. So with me being there and with this being such an issue, I can stay more on top of him than I did. and I can help him get it. Like right now, the yard looks bad again, but like he said, that's all furniture and stuff that he just brought in. A lot of the stuff that's in the front yard is the stuff that he pulled out of the house that got ruined because of rain and everything like that. So now that has to go, and he has all this new furniture to come in. So it's just this exchange. He is 61 years old. It's not exactly easy for him to move around all this heavy stuff, but he does the best that he can, considering that he works 7 days a week. I also have a full-time job. I'm also going to school full-time right now, so time is not necessarily abundant, but we do work whenever we can, so.
Ms. Hardy, do you feel, honestly, that you have the bandwidth, the capability, and the resources to comply with these very stringent rules of the 30-day, coming back here every 30 days, meeting with us, of the 90 days, getting a plan together, and then being able to follow through with that plan? I should say, and resources.
So 90 days is going to be tight, right? Financially, it would be tight. I can pull loans and things of that nature, and I'm not opposed to that, but I would have to see overall how much that's going to cost me. And I was unaware of this until tonight, but sitting here, James handed me, apparently he's been talking to contractors already, trying to figure out what all needed to be done and things of that nature. So he handed me a copy of a plan from a contractor that he had spoken to apparently. So he is trying.
He's making an active effort.
He is. And his effort is not equal to your effort or my effort, but he is making an effort.
And you feel that now that you're living closer, you're able to help push those efforts forward?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. I
you.
appreciate you very much for speaking with us.
Before she leaves, can I?
Yes.
When you're-
Yes, I pass it off, yes.
Before you step away, you mentioned James's health.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned James's health is not real, well, however long James has. What are your plans for that property when James is no longer there?
When he's gone, the place will be leveled. What I'm going to do with the actual property after that, who knows? I've also got my mother that I would like to have closer. So whenever he's gone, I might put something there for her. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But there's no reason to keep the house after he's gone. So
I was wondering if there's some options to that now, as opposed to waiting for that to happen, to where if you were to sell the property or whatever, that might free up some capital for him to live somewhere else for however long it is, so.
I get where that comes from, but why is he somebody else's problem, right? So you're telling me to find him somewhere else to live. You want me to go put him in Arlington? You want me to go put him in Mansfield? It's just not Kennedale's problem. Like, I mean, he's
We all
a
have
resident.
relatives, I understand. So,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I applaud you for answering these questions tonight because they're tough, and I appreciate that. You said something kind of along the lines of Ms. Hollins, that if you were to remedy this problem by magic today, whatever that was, and in 30 days, it was acceptable and ready to move forward, would James be capable of managing it in that way, or would he immediately return to the hoarding that creates the problems that we're in today? And then you have that recycled problem.
Left to his own devices, yes, it would turn back the way it was. Like I said, he requires some hand-holding, right? So back before I had moved away, we used to have regular dinners. He came to my house every night for dinner, and we would sit and chat and talk. And I think if I could get him back to that spot, we would be okay.
You're facing this problem today. Do you have options in your mind on how you would move forward?
My plan is to try and get the property cleared so that I can get somebody in there to do some work. Nathan mentioned to you guys about the whole homesteaded homeowner thing, right? Because we tried that bit, and then that homestead thing
It's
threw a wrench
another
in it.
challenge, and I applaud you for trying to work through that after
Yeah.
that explanation.
So after he mentioned the general contractor thing to me, he's like, anybody can register as a general contractor, you just need insurance. He goes, oh, by the way, it's going to take a couple of tens of thousands of dollars to get that insurance a month. So that's not really an option either. So I'll need to try and speak to a general contractor and see what I can do. Honestly, my first step financially is to try and get my money back from that foundation company or to get them to finish the work. If they can come out and finish the work up to code, I don't care. I just need the work done or the money back so that I can pay somebody else.
You mentioned James gave you a plan or a contractor he'd talked to. Did it come with a dollar amount?
On the bottom of that paper, it said 45,000. So, which whenever Nathan and I had talked to a while back about it, he said that the last property that they had abated was a $40,000 lien against the property. So if it's a $40,000 lien against the property to have no house or a $45,000 fee to get the house fixed, I would probably just get the house fixed. Thank you. Anybody else?
Ms. Hardy, have you considered, and I don't know if this is possible permit-wise, or maybe demolishing the house and putting in a trailer there? You can't?
It's not allowed. Yeah, we talked about that, but it's not an option.
That's not in their future plans. There's another trailer house in the neighborhood that is already a trailer house. You're not allowed to pull it out and put a new one in. It's not in the future city plans.
Okay. Not zoned for it, okay.
No, because we've thought about that route. We've thought about,
I was just seeing if there was, yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
we
all
thought about
right,
the tiny home route,
right.
you know, but that's also not in the future plans for that neighborhood. They want it commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I have another really tough one for you. If Mr. Hardy's ill, how long can he sustain doing this work or his daily work to actually have resources to move forward in a positive way?
So James is old.
And I'm not asking for detail, I'm
Right.
just feasible that he has the ability to continue.
I do believe so. He, we had his whole bout with cancer last year. He's in remission. They were able to remove everything. By he's not going to last much longer, I mean that the man has worked his entire life and has broken just about every bone in his body, right? So he doesn't have a whole lot of mobility and stuff left. So at some point, it's going to come down to he's going to have to be in somebody else's care. He's not there yet. He is one of those super strong-minded, independent people. He refuses to move in with somebody else. He can do it all on his own. Whenever all this first came about, I forget his name, but the fire chief had given me some options for like, it's not assisted living, but like those apartments for adults that might need someone to look out for them kind of thing. He said, absolutely not. I don't need a babysitter.
So that makes me ask the next question then. There are options. He's made a choice not to take advantage of some of those options at this time.
Correct. Yeah. It's just like one of those older people in the shift of life, right? You go from being independent, taking care of yourself, taking care of family, to all of a sudden you need somebody else to take care of you. And that's a tough transition.
It's a tough one. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Ms. Muracosi, do you have anything else? How about you, Ms. Hollins? Mr. Fader, Mr. Turner, Mr. Crum.
Tough spot.
Okay.
Spot.
I do have one question though that I'm not understanding. So if y'all vote today to vacate and then demolish within 90 days, because that's what Nathan is saying. If the house isn't brought completely up, it's 90 days. And vacate is immediately, it's not 30 days from now. When Nathan said it, it's immediately. And then basically he said, we'll start ticketing James with misdemeanors if we find James on the property. That's what Nathan is saying. I don't know if that was clear to everybody, but that's exactly what he's saying. So basically what y'all would be voting on today is if we feel it's right to kick a man out onto the streets and make him homeless, or face the potential of going to jail for staying on his property, is potentially what y'all are voting on right now.
Nathan, you want to speak?
Yeah, Nathan, do you want to make sure that we have full understanding?
Sure, that's the staff's recommendation. That's not what you're voting on, because you can make a motion. You could choose not to issue an order to vacate, right, and go another route. That's our recommendation. Like I mentioned before, it's if a home is deemed substandard and is continued to be occupied, that's the reality of the situation. We want to approach this as humanely as possible, right? What the court system has taught me previously, I can write him a ticket every day. You don't have the money to pay for it. It doesn't do any good, right? So that's not my intent. What I'm simply presenting is that there is liability that's on part of the city, and I want to be on record saying this is what the request was, and the board can go make a motion however the board decides. And so these are simply our recommendations, but that's not what you're voting on right now, because there has been a
What we're
motion.
really making a motion on is somebody living in what has been deemed an unsafe environment. Not necessarily we were wanting to remove somebody from a lifelong home. It's making sure that we're doing what is liable and responsible for the city to make sure somebody, our citizen, is safe. At the same time, trying to give them opportunity, in my position, giving them an opportunity to try to make that situation safe. Honestly, I see about 3 steps here, or 3 problems. One, we got a problem that it's not safe for somebody to inhabit that home. And that's not something we can overlook. If we neglect to do that, then we really are turning our back on James. Number 2, we got to make sure that that house is safe for him and whoever comes into that house. And number 3, we've got a hoarder situation. I'm not so worried about the hoarder situation. That can be dealt with. You know, that's something that over time we can get that fixed. But we can't, in good conscience, sit here and be responsible for the city and let somebody inhabit a home that the city has deemed clearly is not safe for him. That's not what a citizen would do for their neighbor. It's certainly not what we've been sworn to do for this city. So that takes priority in my position, is that we've got to do what's safe for James and take the emotion out of it, and that this is his home. And then part 2, try to get this in a situation where we can fix that home so he can continue to stay there if that's what's best for him moving forward. Yeah, go ahead. I don't know that the city necessarily needs to be inside of it. When I saw that gas meter, I know the gas isn't on right now, but that and some of the electrical that I saw through the window, the open foundation, some of those things tells you that really it's not a healthy environment for him. I know that y'all would want to make a strong argument to say, hey, this part of the house, you know, it's safe here, it's okay there, but it's not. It really is clearly below, you know, the standard of what we would want our loved one to be in. He's kind of let it kind of slide into that position. My hope is that we're able to make a motion tonight that gives us a chance to keep him safe and give you guys a chance to come up with a good solution for this and be able to put that in place and keep him where he is, if that's what you guys decide you want to do. And Ms. Holmes was right. It's a really tough decision for you. You're balancing a loved one and doing everything you can for someone who's not just blood relative, but somebody who's been important in your life, probably your entire life, and doing what's not just emotional of what's best for him, but health-wise, what, you know, is safe for him moving forward. It's a tough spot. And like you said, he may not be here another 25 years. So how does that all play together? I do not envy your position, but my gosh, do I applaud you for taking care of family. I wish all of us would take care of family like you're stepping up to take care of him. But the responsibility we have is to make number one, that he is safe, whoever's on that property is safe, and then get an opportunity here to see if we can't fix this situation permanently for as long as James is able to be there. Yeah.
Okay, so what is the clear expectation to make the house safe? The flooring that was removed in that room was done when the foundation people pulled the floor.
When they were in the process of repairing that, they bailed on you.
Pulled it all out.
Yeah.
Okay, they rebuilt the run, I call them runners, they may not be called runners.
Yeah.
The main boards underneath the floor.
Right.
They pulled all that out and rebuilt those runners.
Yeah.
And to get access underneath the house because the house was setting on the
Sure.
ground.
Settling.
They braced it up, almost a foot, so.
Yeah.
They braced it up off the ground, so they had to pull the flooring out of that room to do the work.
Right.
So that flooring wasn't missing prior to.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to break some eggs here before you made the omelet. Yeah, it almost 2 steps backwards here. Mr. Gonzalez is going to have to answer what qualifies for a safe inhabitant at that point. But I think from what I'm understanding, it's certainly going to be a foundation that can withstand that structure. And then I'm going to think the next part is making sure the electrical is sound on that. Again, you guys, I'll get up on that roof with you. We'll fix that roof if we can get the rest of this stuff going. But I'm going to guess foundation one and making sure the electrical and plumbing are secure at that point. And I think at that point, Nathan, it would be somewhat considered that largely cover the safe to inhabit.
Sure, there'll be substantial improvement. There's subfloor and there's flooring, we're not asking for it to be tiled or anything, but what they presented here would go a long way. So like rebuild the north end, subfloor walls. It says 2 inches rafters where needed. We need that done. The roof assembly, the southeast corner, do the subfloors with 3/4 inch plywood, that's pretty stout. Northeast room, remove, build the wall, install support beams and support.
Mr. Nathan, is that what you were originally given?
This is what James mentioned, his contractor that he's been engaging with. Sorry, I made copies for her and asked her
Okay,
to provide that to you
okay.
if she wanted to. But a lot of this is pertains to the structural repairs that need to be done, roof assembly, but we do need the electrical to be made safe, the plumbing that needs to be made safe. And then, ventilation or mechanical, I'm not saying you have to put air conditioning in it. The code doesn't talk about that. You have to be able to heat and cool a space to minimum 68 degrees, but you can do that through natural ventilation, a window unit, a swamp cooler. You can do quite a bit of, there's other things that you can do out there. You can put window units in every room and meet the code. But you can't plug them in if your electrical's not sound and safe.
Yeah. And I'll echo that. The job that I do, bad electric probably costs more civilian deaths and fires than pretty much anything else in my line of work. But here's what I'll commit to you. If y'all are able to get this process moving forward, me and my 3 boys will come up here and do whatever legwork you need to help him get in this thing moving forward. If that's the decision you guys decide to make, we'll support you however we can. I don't know which direction you think you need to go on this to take care of James the best you can in your property, but we're there to help you if we can. But I think we're going to have to take a vote here pretty quick and make a decision on that. And I think for me, the safety of James and anybody else on the property really takes precedence right now. And giving y'all an opportunity to move forward with that is certainly part of that. But that's kind of where I am on it. Got any questions for me?
Real clear understanding on when he's able to live in the house.
Okay.
What we need to do to meet, what needs to be met right now with, solar panels were installed years ago.
Mhm.
We pointed out one, but I think there's 3 up there, 3 or 4 up on the roof.
Okay.
And they were installed forever ago. I don't even know how long ago, but they've been up there a long time.
Yeah.
And they don't run off of lithium batteries, they run off of regular batteries. I've actually supplied them to James, because I deal with electronics, and it's batteries that, they're about this size.
Yeah.
But it's a bunch of them.
Gotcha.
So there is power in the house. There's not electrical to the grid. People live off grid. We just happen to live inside of the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the water's out to the meter. Just gotta make sure everything's tight inside the house to make sure the water's turned on inside the house. I'm not sure about the gas meter.
Well, it's off and it's,
I'm not sure.
needs to be until they get a meter on it, but
Well, if, one more question for you. If there is an order to vacate, would James be willing to have a temporary solution to his housing so that things could be done? Or are you saying he's going to refuse to leave the property? That's a hard question to ask, but we need to understand the answer.
No, he would refuse in the beginning. However, a conversation goes a long way with James. I could get him to go to Dallas to stay with his wife and kid for a little while, but then he's away from the property and can't work. And so it's kind of difficult to find where that pivot point's going to be. So.
Understand. So that's still a challenge. Thank you.
Would you
Yeah.
want to live in that house? Would you want to live in that house, or would you have, with a child in that house, would you want to live there? If you had the option to live in that house, would you live in that house? Right now, just the way it is. Yeah, no, don't, not, or homeless, just, would you feel comfortable living?
The house is structurally sound inside. The outside looks terrible. The inside of the house is structural. I've been in the house. If I didn't think it was safe in that house, I wouldn't walk in the house. I've been in the house. I've helped James do things on the house. I wouldn't put my time and effort into the house or James if I didn't think that the building was structurally sound. She values my opinion a lot. If I was to tell her that the house needs to be demolished, the house would be demolished. It's not at that stage. The inside of the house is not at that stage. The outside just looks rough. It hasn't been kept. It's not cedar siding, I don't know what you call that siding, but it's the old siding that her grandpa put up forever ago. It's not cedar, I don't know what you call it, but, is it cedar? No, I don't know if it's cedar. But would I live in it now rather than being homeless? Sure. Would I move out of my house and into that house? No. But would I go sleep underneath the bridge? No. I mean, I wouldn't move from my house underneath the bridge. Okay. So, here's the thing, if originally lived in this house, we didn't have two options. Is it really, we're at a point where somebody feels like we've been played, right? Because we've known about this for a long time. And, the house isn't less safe as it was 2 years ago. So, we're really worried about the city's liability. Is it safe for people to live there? Is it any less safe now than it was 5 years ago? So, my thought is, it seems like they got confused moment and they realized that if something's not done, something bad's gonna happen. Okay? And I'm not going to put it out on the street. Okay? I'm not around you, okay? But, so it's our responsibility as a community to take care of the people. So, I think they realize what they're up against and what needs to be done. I think we have a timeline, and you guys are going to be held to a timeline, and I don't think that's unreasonable. But I don't know if just because things haven't gone, we've kind of pushed, and now I think we're at the point where we need to just. I think we have some options that we can give them, but we run that option. They obviously care about it. And, I don't leave my house. Okay? Really, because he's lived there. So, I mean, I don't know how we can vote, I don't know what our options are, but I think we need to get a timeline from them. We're gonna have to hold you guys to. Now, it's not an absolute, at some point, stuff happens, right? And
permit from this city was not the easiest thing. It was where you. It took a year and a half to build that. Now, that's a little different, I realize, I don't think this person was here when we were doing that. But, you know, I don't think it's black, it's not. I think it's officer, you wouldn't be here for all this. You know, okay. Yes, I mean, because, I mean, the thing is, if something happens, you know, bless his heart, then he has lived there this whole time, and that was gonna happen. That sounds silly, but come on. I mean, how can you put somebody on the street? Now, he's done his job, and I appreciate the fact, look, everyone's done it. This is a big deal. Everyone's did it. And at a certain point, if things aren't done, or at least a progress, then again, financial-wise, it's hard. I'm sorry, it is tough. I'm sorry you got to think about that company, and so maybe there's, I don't know, some legal stuff you can do. But, you know, this isn't some drug house that we watch people go in and out of, and bad stuff is happening. Partially, they live there, obviously, he obviously means something to some people besides his family. I think a plan needs to be put in place, and I don't like talking about it every month. I mean, every month, you know, maybe if you bring up in what we're talking about, is something that you got. I mean, obviously, that's the obvious situation. And, you know, we haven't been in the house, you know, is it safe for us? It's safe for you, okay? Now, it's not ideal and stuff needs to be fixed. I think we can help them maybe work, give some time frame, give a timeline that they can get started. If they've had time, maybe now it's, you know, they realize they're fixed. That's my thought. Thank you.
Based on what Mr. Crum just said, Nathan, I've got a quick question. At what point did you deem it substandard? Is that an official date, timestamp?
So I issued a notice, November 1st of last year of 24. After that last follow-up, seeing the condition of the home. Again, I mentioned the occupants. And they asked about interior conditions. I'm more than happy to, if they'll consent to inspection on that. You know, we would have been in the home to inspect the areas that were repaired for the foundation. I can only go in there under two things, either effective consent or under a request for inspection tied to a building permit. And neither of those two have occurred. So what I presented tonight is telling you, guys, this is what I'm seeing from the outside. And I did state, but the inside, we don't know just yet. I have made the comment that to them is that based on what I'm seeing out there, I don't know if it's safe to send an inspector inside, but you tell me. You know, there's other things other than just structural concerns that we have as building inspectors. You know, interior conditions, interior environment, you know, air quality, those types of things, right? So happy to perform those inspections if that permit gets called in, happy to renew the permit. If we have a new contract coming in, we can just transfer that over. Again, I'm presenting options to the board, but also these are things that we've talked to them about as well. I just need some sort of action.
Tell me again exactly what the ordinance says so that we can try to make a motion on this.
So in my recommendation, we asked that we did ask for in order to vacate, that's y'all's prerogative on that, but that all nuisances be abated within 30 days, that they obtain all necessary permits within that 30-day period. repair or demolish. If that's not feasible, the ordinance says, then the board can require them to provide a detailed construction schedule outlining when repairs will be made not to exceed 90 days. Now, it's a matter for legal interpretation on your order not exceeding 90 days. And when they come back, if there's still some more time, there can be another order granting them extensions. I believe the ordinance has a provision for when you can grant an extension, but if you don't have any progress within the 90 days, if we come back 90 days from now and there hasn't been any progress at that point, our recommendation is that you do issue an order to demolish and vacate at that point. So that's been our ask.
Okay. Quick question on that. If you did an inspection on the interior, and if you identified those things that turned substandard above so that it could be inhabited, there could be an opportunity then for the homeowner to be in the home, not vacated, but you really don't know right now. Is that correct? What you see is substandard based on where you're at. If you had an opportunity to go inside, investigate, and review, you might find 7 things. If you did these 7 things, Ms. Hardy, then we can have next discussion about what we do next to abate all these other problems.
Correct.
But that gets us to the place that we're no longer substandard.
Correct.
Am I speaking correctly?
You are, and what it does is the ordinance lists 20, 30 different types of violations, and it says one or any of these. So you could have one of those is technically substandard, right? You can have multiple, right? It's the Board of Building Appeals that could make that clarification. So you have one, or you can have 10. Here we have enough to where I've been able to deem it that the structural, roof assembly, electrical, no running water, gas is not the issue. What I saw there was, a concern. And then also a premises, a substandard premises was the accumulation. So we have a number of things that are deeming it substandard. Those things, it can be, if becomes, the foundation gets repaired, now the roof assembly gets repaired, we've constructed the walls, we've made it weather tight, right? And then we're just talking about some interior improvements that need to be made.
So could you look at the property and then identify those things that would put us in a place that you would feel comfortable saying, we're no longer substandard, we still have issues and we have to manage them to avoid the vacate or to actually let someone be in the home?
Sure.
From a safety perspective,
At that point, it becomes a property maintenance nuisance, which is a different threshold.
right?
And that wouldn't, you wouldn't be able to deem it substandard under that. Is it a code violation? Yes, but there's remedies for that. So notice, citation, or just give them time to get it repaired, right? We'll still track it in a code case, but absolutely. Again, I don't know if you can issue an order to have it inspected because they still have their constitutional rights to.
Absolutely.
But if that's something that they're willing to consent to, I'm willing to go out there or have someone else come with me if they don't want me there, and provide them a list of what needs to be done.
And let's be very candid here. If the list is 30 items, Mr. Hardy, Ms. Hardy may look at the list and go, yeah, no, I'm going to take a different option. Or I'm going to, I think both sides then have to have a discussion, right? But is that a discussion y'all have had about what is the minimum things we can get done immediately and then manage to the other things that you're talking about? Do you feel like y'all have had that discussion?
I feel we have. We actually had that in front of the prosecutor. What is the minimum? Let's at first work on the outside, and then we can work on the inside, and we allotted them time for that. before we got to this point. So I know we've, at least from a staff's perspective, yes, we have afforded them, and we're willing to do the same as well. But
Well,
we
the
do need-
outside isn't the issue for the vacate, right? It's the substandard living on the inside.
It's both. So the exterior, if you have dilapidated exterior coverings, if you have.
I'm sorry, I thought you were speaking to the hoarding issue. I apologize.
So no, there is, in the substandard provisions of the ordinance, there is sections in there pertain to the accumulation of rubbish.
Got it.
Refuse, those types would still make a property substandard. It could be a brand-new home, but if you have feces and everything like that, your premises is not safe. It's not.
Thank you.
Let me see if this, I'm considering making this motion, see if this sounds feasible. To make a motion on this item 2501, that the owner present an approved plan to address and correct all violations within the next 30 days, including pulling permits within those 30 days, and thus remedying all these violations over the next 90 days. Am I getting in the area of what that ordinance is or the code is requiring, as well as giving them the opportunity to have time to get with you and fix these things? Does that sound appropriate for a motion?
I believe so.
Any thoughts on that, guys, gals? I didn't throw that in there. And I'm going to throw one thing out there. If Mr. Gonzalez has the time and you're willing, I'd be happy to come out with him tomorrow and walk the property and look inside and see if maybe this isn't something that we can agree on is safe for you to be there for right now. Would you be willing to have us out there tomorrow? Mr. Gonzalez, do you have time to do that tomorrow? If not, maybe next week.
I'll make time.
Okay. Hate to throw you, kind of threw you in the bus on that one, so if you have time, please. But I'm happy to go with you.
We'll get it done. We'll get
Okay,
it done.
I'm happy to go with him if you'll be willing to have us out there.
I think it's important that we get into the inside of the building because I think we do have a liability. We also go back to what Mr. Crum said, we've kind of had a liability since November 1st, right? So let's hustle up and yes, coming from behind this dais, where there's some other things we can do too to help as a community. But I do think you've got some options and some decisions you have to make. And Mr. James, I think you've got some decisions you need to make too, because you may need to consider how you would manage your life in the short term so that some of this work can be done. Some of it may not be able to be done while you're there, right? So we all need to give a little in this, and I think we've got a tough challenge ahead of us. I don't take that lightly. I think we have a tough challenge, but at any point, somebody may have to come to the table and say, that's not the option for me. You're the property owner. And then we do have, if the schedule's not met, we have obligations that we have to live to too, right? So thank y'all for answering the questions, but I think Mr. Hall may have one more question.
Once-
No, I think
No, it's
we
on
have
the
to do
table.
something tonight
Yeah.
so that it gives them, if that's where we choose, kind of gives them the opportunity to do that. And that would be put in the motion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the items on
But
the
the motion
table.
as of right now does not require.
Vacation.
That's
Not
what
at
we
this
intend to
point, no,
make,
sir.
I'll second the motion.
Well, let me put it out there official, so it's a little more formal. I make a motion on item BBA case 25-01, that the owner present an approved plan to address and correct all violations to the city. Do you want me to say just to Nathan Gonzalez or to the city in the next 30 days? And during that same 30 days, that permits be pulled to correct those violations, and that said work be completed and remedied those situations that need to be addressed in the next 90 days, subject to inspections from the city at that point.
We put something in there that property owner needs to show reports of progress to this committee on a monthly basis, so that.
And that
I'm not coming back.
and that the owner meet with the city and/or this committee if we meet on a 30-day basis every month to show progress on that and continue conversations with us. Good? Good, everybody?
I second.
Let's say that, Madam Chair, I'm very glad that it is being recorded. All right, from procedural, are we good with that? Okay, thank you. Then let's go ahead and vote on that. All those in favor of moving forward with this?
Aye.